Good evening. Welcome to the Lompoc City Council meeting. This is Tuesday, June 20th, 2017. It is 6:38 p.m. We are reconvening from a closed session. We started at 5:30. Let's see, City Attorney, could we have a report on closed session?
Thank you, Mayor. There were two items on the agenda for closed session. They were both discussed, but there's no reportable action.
Okay, thank you. Would you please rise and join us in an invocation by Pastor Joey Robinson?
So thank you for the invitation for me to come and give the invocation tonight. Let's pray together. We come together and thank you, God, for our time here. We thank you for so many blessings that have been poured out upon this city. We thank you for the leadership, and we are challenged to lift up our leaders to you for wisdom to govern and a sense of welfare, for justice and need of our people and our community, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness. And we thank you for this council, our leadership in this city. We also want to thank you for the goodness that is coming about in this community as thousands of people come to our city this weekend. We pray that you would bless that time. It would be a time where people are welcomed into the Lompoc community for our Flower Festival. We also are a people of need, and we thank you for the service of so many servants here in our city. We specifically think of one of the officers' family, the Scott family, and we lift up Noah to you tonight, and we thank you that you would be with that family. Father, would you help them do the service of your community here tonight? In your name, amen.
Amen. Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we have a presentation by the Lompoc Economic Development Committee, I think. There we go.
Hi, good evening. Is this on? Mm-hmm. Okay. Maria Hall, EDC Chair. So this is our, we do this twice a year, and this is going to cover the period from February of this year through June of this year. So, all right, the Economic Development Committee, our vision statement is to develop a strong, positive image which attracts and retains business and residents and visitors that achieves economic vitality in the Lompoc Valley. All right, so our committee is made up of sort of three different groups. We have the executive committee where there's myself, Jeremy Ball is my vice chair, which means he'll be the chair the next 2 years. Gilda Cordova, Tom Davidson, Carol Newsom, Rob Traylor. And then we have our full committee members, and there's a whole list there, I won't read all of them. And then the associate members that we have, and Chelsea Cochran represents the Chamber of Commerce there. And we also have 3 open positions, so definitely note that. Our membership, so 22 total members, 10 regular at-large positions. 5 of the regular positions have membership tied directly to council members, so 1 position per council member, including the mayor, and 7 associates, which includes a representative from the chamber, that's Chelsea Cochran, and Explore Lompoc, which is Gilda Cordova. So we currently have 3 open positions, which happen to be associate positions. So, and we also strive for greater ethnic and industry diversity. The committee identified several areas to focus our recruitment. So one of those was Lompoc Hospital District, and that position has been filled by Dr. Butch. Allen Hancock College, that position is filled by Felix Hernandez. Lompoc Unified School District, that position is filled by Henry Galena. And then we are encouraging applicants from the casino and also the FCC. Those are areas that we identified. All right, so volunteer hours. So just in this period from February through June, we had approximately 255.25 hours. And these were in addition to our regular meetings and our executive meetings. So additional meetings that we had were some of our subcommittees, which you can read there, and also other events that we've attended, so chamber events, city council meetings, awards, other committee, commission, and board meetings throughout the city, and also the UCSB Economic Forecast and the Economic Summit. And then topics that we supported, Make a Difference Day. We have our twice a month column in the Lompoc Record. And as always, Old Town Revitalization, Zoning Ordinance, the Broadband Committees, the EVA Awards, which we present once a month to a local business, and also the topic of beautification. So, yeah, just to elaborate then, these hours represent above and beyond the regular meetings, so hours in subcommittees, other meetings, research, emails, phone calls, etc. And now I will turn over my microphone to Jasmine McGinty.
Alrighty. So I'm Jasmine McGinty. I'm just going to give you guys a quick update on the top 5 priorities of the EDC. Back in October 2016, we adopted the newest update to the strategic plan. So with those, we have 5 initiatives that our EDC works on. The first one is supporting broadband connectivity. So the first 3 bullets there you'll see are the initiatives for and the goals for this specific initiative. One new thing that they added in October was to produce a needs assessment, including existing broadband infrastructure and gaps, to really study what we have and what we need in order to bring fiber to the area and support the connectivity. So some updates, are discussing opportunities with providers bringing fiber to businesses and new residential development. Back in April, they had a meeting in San Ynez with different stakeholders as part of the Tri-County Broadband Initiative to see what they can provide, what they're working on in our area. Another update for this particular initiative is that we are exploring that needs assessment for public and private broadband infrastructure and gaps with the funding request cut from the next year's budget. The second initiative that the EDC is currently working on is our funding initiative, and is to improve the ability to respond to economic development, investment, and funding opportunities. So the top 4 bullets there are just different goals for this particular initiative in terms of funding. One thing they did want to do that they discussed back in October was to explore the Community Development Foundation through the Chamber of Commerce and how various projects could be applicable with this particular source of funding. So some progress that we've made over the past few months was that staff has applied for the HRPP grant for park improvements, as well as explored a potential EDA grant to use at the future Central Coast Business Park. So while they're still looking for their first tenant for that particular development, we have been researching a grant to help with infrastructure costs and such. So we've been in touch with the federal EDA representative to learn more about that grant and how we can apply for it. This particular initiative has come up as a topic of discussion with the committee, and at our next meeting on August 3rd, we're going to discuss this priority and see if we want to refocus our efforts and how best to move forward, maybe make it a little more specific in how we want to move on with this initiative. So our third initiative that the EDC has been very successful with is the marketing initiative. Some of the goals here are to market economic development, explore and expand events, and economic development capacity. So as Maria mentioned earlier with the volunteer hours, this is continuing giving out our Economic Vitality Award on a monthly basis. And with that, continuing the Lompoc Record column every other Sunday. They do write a column for the Lompoc Record that highlights businesses and topics in economic development. Another goal for this initiative is to explore expanding the Old Town Market Old Town Summer of Markets and Events along with the Chamber of Commerce, work on the website and social media, and plan the second Economic Vitality Forum. So just a few updates. Our progress on this initiative is that we've continued to reach out to various industries, as Maria mentioned, reaching out to the FCC and Chumash to expand our capacity. There's a list there of the EVA awards that have been given in 2017, and we are gearing up to do our annual EVA award, which will be in July. So keep a lookout for that. Our biweekly columns are continuing in the Lompoc Record. As far as the Old Town Summer Markets, we've advocated to, and supported the chamber that now the event is going to be open an extra hour. So rather than 5 to 7 p.m., it's going to be open 5 to 8 p.m., so that's really exciting. And the EDC is currently in the process of planning the second Economic Vitality Forum, which will focus on increasing access to high-paying jobs and wide-ranging employment opportunities. So there's a tentative date for that. It's not set in stone yet, but keep a lookout for that in early 2018. Our next initiative is the workforce and improving business environment. So one of the main goals of this is to plan supporting local economic education initiatives and partnerships. So with that, we are working with Allen Hancock College and LUSD to plan the Pathways to Preparedness Success Education Summit, which has a date set for September 13th, 2017 at the Dick DeWee Center. And this will help bring together local businesses, education in both the K-12 and the higher education in Lompoc. We're also continuing our business visitation program as a business retention tool and other recruitment efforts such as our retail strategies partnership, brokers breakfast, and trade show. One example of a successful business visitation that we had was with the Shack in Lompoc. We were able to learn about through one of these business visits that they were having concerns with their property management, and it connected when we, at our next broker's breakfast, we learned that these concerns were stemmed from their new management, and we learned that the shopping center that they were having issues with is now under new property management. So we were able to connect these two different events, and we really learn a lot from these business programs. We're able to chat with the different businesses and see what concerns they may have, and successes. We do find a lot of those as well. Some other updates with this is we have a new business incentive developed last year. Was the water retrofit fee was suspended in the Old Town, trying to promote development and such. Our last but not least initiative that the EDC is working on is actually the newest priority that they established in October. This is a brand new initiative, and it was to advocate for improving the physical and perceived image of Lompoc. So really obtaining a general understanding about partners in the beautification process, and they've been successful in promoting these events. One event, the most recent event, was on May 20th. They advocated through chamber resources and social media. They advocated for these partnerships. Love and Lompoc event on the 20th. They're continuing to learn about different beautification groups and have been in touch with some of the beautification groups, such as the Beautification Commission, to learn about how they can continue to improve this perceived image of Lompoc. So now I'm going to hand it over to Teresa, and she's going to discuss the recreation improvements of the Aquatic Center and Thompson Park.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, members of the audience and community. This next slide was a request by Councilmember Starbuck to start including in our periodic report so we can track how the improvements we've made at various recreation facilities are bringing in additional tournaments and events that encourage people to come in from out of our area and spend time in our community for their sports-related activities, and then also stay here and shop, dine, maybe stay overnight. So in 2012, the Aquatic Center timers were installed. You saw this graph last time. We did add 2016-17 numbers on here. And we had Los Padres League Finals at the Aquatic Center for 2 days, and 8 teams were in attendance with over 600 attendees. So that is our report for 2016-17. We had 23 different swim meets and we had 24 different water polo meets. So you can see that that is increasing there. We were closed for a while for our renovation, so that did also have an impact, but nonetheless, our numbers for meets and water polo tournaments did increase. Here we have the JM ball field that we're tracking in. We made improvements to the ball field in March of 2003, and here we're showing that we have tournaments. Pardon me. This one is on a calendar year, whereas the previous slide was on a fiscal year. So you don't see 2017 on there yet because we're only halfway through the year. But next time we come back to you, we should be pretty close to having all of 2017 to report. I can share with you that Little League for the last several years has had their tournament at this ball field, and this year they did not. They chose to go to another location to sort of, move things around a little bit and share the wealth. But we have had them have the tournament here the last several years. We are looking for some other opportunities to have tournaments on that field so that we can continue to take advantage of the improvements we made there. Here's where we get into the economic indicators that we share with you on a regular basis. This is the updated unemployment information. And as of, this was from the Employment Development Department as of June 16th. I think this is for information through May. Preliminary data, not seasonally adjusted. And you can see Lompoc here with an unemployment rate of 4.7%. You can see other communities in the area what theirs is. Isla Vista, for example, 6.6. Buellton, 2.2. Goleta, 2.1. I think the state is around 4%. Is Mr. Wilkie here? He knows this stuff. So we're a little bit above that. But that gives you an idea of where it is. And our sales tax activity, another economic indicator that we look at. We estimate finishing the 16-17 year pretty much in the same ballpark as we have in the last couple as last year. So it's a very nominal difference of $29,000. For transient occupancy tax or hotel tax, bed tax, we are estimating that we will finish the fiscal year with an increase over last year of about $16,000, about 1%. For property tax activity, we see an increase here of about $275,000 over the previous year. So that's improving. Business license activity, we have about the same number of business licenses estimated to be pulled, maybe a few more than last year. Capital development activity, this is basically the valuation of building permits. It gives us an idea of how much people are investing in our community and its growth and improvements. And we see it's up a little bit of about $307,000, a little over 1%. So kind of in the same ballpark as last year, a little bit improved. This is a new slide that we've added, and we'll start sharing this as well with the EDC and our monthly reports to that committee. This is in response to council's update on its priorities, and that housing is one of its top priorities. So you can see here, these are different housing or where different projects are in our community and in the valley. We have one project, this first one, that is actually under construction. It's a triplex. Then we have all of these projects right here that have been approved by council and the commission and are at, they have all recently had map extensions. Of those, Burton Ranch development with its 476 units is 3 different property owners are part of that large project, and we are moving forward with them on the development of a community facilities district in order to assist with the financing of the infrastructure so that that can be done in that manner. So that is moving forward. The next project down here is a proposed high-density apartment unit, 24 units, and that we recently had a pre-conceptual on that project. Pardon me, one more. Over here, Bailey Avenue Corridor Annexation, we have two different lots, about 140 acres total, that are moving forward and will be in front of council for discussion of their annexation request on July 18th. And then in the valley, I think we talk about the Lompoc Valley. There are these other projects that are also under construction: Falcon Heights, Village Country Club, Silverleaf, and Oak Hills. So combined, that's about 1,300 units at various stages, if you will. And here you can see where some of those are: Burton Ranch, Summit View, north of the Y, Coastal Meadows on our northwest corner, the triplex that we're talking about here, Mosaic Walk over here on West Ocean, the 24-unit apartment complex that we had a preconceptual with, and River Terrace over here on the east side. Update on our work with Retail Strategies. This is our recruitment effort that we do in conjunction not only with our local brokers and our city staff efforts. Retail Strategies represents us throughout the year and nationwide, and they have in this time period talked to 36 different retail prospects. We've had between us and them additional 8 follow-ups that beyond that, and 1 expansion follow-up. Of those 36 retail prospects, 9 of them were recently obtained at Recon ICSC, which is the largest commercial real estate trade show in Las Vegas. It's a really a good spot to go network, and the industry goes in order to set up several networking meetings with different retailers and restaurants that can be prospects. And then here is our tracking of the different businesses that have opened, closed, that are planned to be open, and we've contacted them to try and get numbers of jobs created, jobs lost. Sometimes we aren't able to ascertain the information, but this is our best effort to kind of keep a handle on this and share with you what's going on in our business community. So if there's any that you know of that we did not get on here, please let us know. We can update it. But essentially, we've got 6 new opened businesses during this time frame, 1 expansion, 2 businesses closed, and 9 down here that are in development. The jobs created and lost, basically, in the ones that have opened, this top portion here, add up to 79 new jobs. In the projects that are planned down here, we anticipate 167 jobs, and you can see the Hilton Garden Inn is the big one there. So that's a total of 246 jobs being created through these projects. So that's our periodic run-through, and we're here to answer any questions about the volunteer and staff collaborative effort that we have.
Councilmember Mosby.
So how many single-family housing starts? You said 1 triplex, but do we have any starts, single-family housing starts?
Under construction, just the triplex.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, just for your information, for those in the council chamber, we're experiencing a little technical difficulty with the speakers. Our feed out to TAP TV is fine, and the feed to the recording for the website is fine. And you're hearing a little echo because I think we're picking up the speaker from the lobby, but the speakers in here are not functioning right now. Also, I want to take this opportunity to ask Fire Marshal Paschke to come forward, and she's going to introduce our new building official.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the community. It's with great pleasure that I introduce Ron Takaguchi, and he comes to us as a contract building official from JAS Pacific and is a licensed engineer. He has most recently spent 7 years as the building official for the city of Santa Monica, and he has a total of 30 years in experience in building and safety. And he believes that building and safety are a partnership with building services and verifying the life safety compliance. And most recently, he was the former past president of Cal ABO, which is basically California's building official kind of big club. So introduce him, this is his face, and thank you.
Go ahead.
Mayor Lingo, honorable council members, Ron Takiguchi, very happy to be here to serve the citizens of Lompoc and the city council and the administration, city manager of Lompoc. And as the fire marshal mentioned, I am looking for the life safety importance, preservation for the citizens of Lompoc, but at the same time being a partner in construction and occupancy. And whatever we could assist in getting there, as mentioned by the Economic Development Report, we look forward to construction and the safety and vitality of Lompoc. And thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, we're
I just wanted to add that we didn't waste any time putting Ron to work. This morning was his first day, and within the first hour and a half, we had him speaking to a couple of different customers that on projects that I'd been involved in. So we threw him into the deep end pretty quickly, and he's been doing great. So thank you. That concludes my report.
anything else? Okay, thank you. We're going to open this up to public comment on the consent calendar.
Welcome to our new building official. Great to have you here. Council, before you authorize bill payment tonight, I need you to understand some realities. Listening to the former mayor of Guadalupe, Francis Romero, speak here at the last council meeting reminded me of the many conversations that she and I had when I was helping her work through the financial collapse of the city of Guadalupe. In particular, our numerous discussions of Guadalupe's structural deficit came to mind as the key to their financial collapse. A structural deficit means that either your income is too low or your expenses are too high, and the problem cannot be corrected by moving forward with the current policies. In the case of Guadalupe, the problem for decades had been there was not enough revenue to support minimum city services, and so funds were borrowed from other city restricted funds without any plan for repayment. The problem you face in Lompoc is just the opposite, and it's new to Lompoc. Since 2015, the city has increased spending without equally increasing ongoing income. The $2 million from the Economic Uncertainty Fund and $1.8 million from the Insurance Fund that were transferred to the general fund as one-time funding fix, along with selling city property, simply conceals a structural deficit. Those one-time funds put off dealing with the structural deficit, but they did not change it. Today, past decisions have come due, and the April's Treasurer's report show the general fund balance at just over $4 million negative. I have included copies of the April Treasurer's report from 2011 to 2017, so you can clearly see the difference. To eliminate this structural deficit, you can choose to return city staffing levels to 2014 and make some other small cuts, or you can change programs. But it is time to make a change because we have now spent more money than we have, and we have not, as a council, adopted a repayment agreement which is required by law. And that is what got Guadalupe in the bottom of the hole with the grand jury. So please, step up and fix it. There's the information for you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. This is on the consent calendar. Anyone else want to speak on the consent calendar?
Hello, my name is Augustine Arias. I'm a citizen of Lompoc, a member of your police department, president of the Lompoc Police Officers Association. And I come before you today based on last meeting, our chief came up and told you guys the crisis that the police department is in. I also come to this point because I'm tired. I'm tired at the point where I'm close to quitting. It's not worth it no more. I came here as a 21-year-old boy or young man, started crime fighting and doing a darn good job, just like many of the guys that stay here. I've recruited many people, and I've had them stay here, promising them a better future. Everybody else in every city around us thanks you guys and you for the police officers you've given them. Many police officers that I've seen leave, which is in excess of 75 police officers since I've been here, are now having positions in the city of Santa Maria, Santa Barbara Sheriffs, Simi Valley, and all over California. If you go look at the upper tier of supervisors in the city of Santa Maria, more than 50% came from your city. They could have been here, they could have stayed here, but you've never showed a commitment to the police department or us. I understand deficit, unfunded liability, but rarely does that come from the police department because we don't retire here. We go somewhere else and retire. I understand all of that stuff. I also understand if you don't have money, then management shouldn't be pulling, thousands of dollars extra a year that they're pulling. In the last 2 years, when you tell police officers and firemen, we can't help you. So why should they? Not my boss. He hasn't seen any since he's been here. Other people. When you look at numbers and you look at contracts and you look at reclassification, I'd love one of those too. Reclassify me as a good police officer, give me 5 more steps. Whether it comes from general fund, whether it comes from some other fund, it doesn't really matter. It's not correct. It's not right. It's not right. Your police department's in a crisis. Today, another officer said goodbye to us. He's going back to Fresno. Out of the 6 officers that are leaving, he's the only one that's leaving for a reason in regards to family. His dad's elderly. He wants to be closer to his dad. I understand that. My dad's elderly, and he lives here. Maybe that's why I haven't left. I also don't leave because I have a sense of pride to this community. I grew up in this community. I didn't like the way the community was while growing up, so I stayed here and I made a difference. I made a big difference. Ask around, you'll quickly find out, or whenever, or whoever would like to talk about it, we can. The LPOA is not going to be quiet anymore. We're not going to sit here and say, oh, okay, let's be quiet and hope that these management people or city council makes the right decision. We'll be very vocal from this point forward on anything you want to know or anything you need to know. And we really will be transparent. Because that's what we swore to do, to be transparent and be good men, good officers, good women, and my time's up. But let's see some action one way or the other. And hopefully on the back end, we'll be all right. But right now, you're down to 41 officers, soon to be down to about 36, 34, maybe even more. Everybody's looking, everybody around us is hiring, and you have a great talent pool to pick from. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, just a reminder, we don't want to clap, boo, anything else, so let's just keep it going. Reminder, this is on the consent calendar, so anyone else on the consent calendar? Okay, with that, we're going to close public comment on this consent calendar, bring it back to the council. The consent calendar consists of things that are generally considered routine and will be passed with one motion of the council unless a council member chooses to pull an item. Does any council member wish to pull an item? Councilmember Mosby.
I just had a quick question for Mr. Wilkie. on what was brought to us about a public comment on that, if you can, showing that our account balance number 10, fund balance number 10, with a negative 4 million in there. I assume we have more than that in there now. 'Cause that was the end of April.
We received about $3 or $4 million on May 1st. So I don't know what the number is for May, but we're actively working on closing the books for May. So what we put to the council as our monthly report is what is in there on April 1st, April 30th.
Okay, so you got some new bump ups is what you're telling me in May.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We typically get property tax payments twice a year, and the second one is in May or June. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any council member wish to pull an item? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve consent calendar as is.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Then let's vote. That passes 5-0. Okay, we have a staff presentation by the library director. There she is.
Okay. Hi. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and members of the public. I'm Sarah Blyle, the Library Director of the Lompoc Library. I'm here tonight to talk about the library's annual summer reading program and tell everyone about all the great activities we have planned for the next few months. But first, I wanted to bring everyone's attention to our mission statement. It's kind of small up there, but it says the Lompoc Library System engages, empowers, and enriches our community. Library staff and our Library Commission have spent the last several months working on a strategic plan for the library. As part of that, we wrote a new mission statement focusing on our priorities. At the library, we engage our community by providing excellent customer service brought to you by friendly and knowledgeable staff. We help empower library users by providing access to resources such as books, computers, the internet, literacy services, and tutoring. We also strive to enrich the lives of people in our community by providing fun and educational programs year-round for all ages. So, summer reading program. This is going to be running from June 9th to August 4th. In the summer, we fulfill our mission by providing the summer reading program. We have a lot of exciting programs for all ages. This year, we started our signups on Friday, June 9th. When the library opened that day, about 100 people streamed into the building in the first 30 seconds, which was pretty amazing. And so far, we've had 1,100 people sign up. So that's 800 children, 130 teens, 170 adults. Last year, we had a total of 1,800 signups, which is up from 900 the year before. So we doubled it last year. We'd love to double it again this year. So come in, sign up. At our first big program last week, it was Zoo to You, where we had an animal advocacy group bring animals to the library to show the kids. We lost count at 533 kids, teens, and adults attending the program on the library lawn, which is pretty amazing if you look at our parking lot and how small that is. The Village Library hosted Zoo to You the next day with 180 attendees. In addition to programs, we also have prizes for both reading and attending programs. So this is all ages, not just kids. Also, during the summer, we have this awesome thing called Lunch at the Library. The Lompoc Library partners with LUSD to provide a place for all youth under 18 to enjoy free, healthy meals. So lunch is on the children's patio at the library, Monday through Thursday at noon, and on Fridays we serve a snack at 4 o'clock. So why do we host the summer reading program? We have a lot of reasons, one of which is fun, because it is fun to keep kids entertained during the summer. But also, it has been proven with studies that if children and teens read as little as 5 books during the summer, it helps them retain their reading skills while they're out of school. So we also want to support a literate community and provide access to free books and programs that will enrich the community. If you are interested in finding some more summer reading program information, you can ask any library staff member. Check out our website, like our Facebook page. You'll find schedules online for all ages, children, teens, and adults. And I would like to thank our local sponsors. We have such a great community. We went out and we asked for help. First of all, the Friends of the Library pay for our summer reading program. So they raise the money with help from the community, people who are purchasing items at quarterly book sales. They also sell dollar chocolate bars, which are very popular with the kids, and almond brittle. Our community partners have generously donated prizes for SRP participants, and I want to take a moment to thank all of them for when we come to ask for help that they very generously donate prizes. So thank you to Applebee's, Chipotle, Eddie's Grill, Floriano's, Friends of the Lompoc Public Library, Grocery Outlet, La Bote, Lompoc Valley of Flowers Half Century Club, Mary Kay, The Master's Touch, Mi Amore, Round Table Pizza, Scratch Kitchen, Southside Coffee, Surf Connection, Tom's Burgers, UCSB Athletics, Umami Yasushi, and Wild West Pizza. We are very grateful to have such good support in this community. So, what our library offers for free. I'm changing gears here a little bit. If you haven't been to the library for a little while, I want to highlight some of the wonderful things we have. Books, you all know about it because that's what people think of when they think of libraries. But did you know we also have ebooks? We have several different ebook providers. We offer movies, including new releases, and that is DVDs and also streaming. Audiobooks for those long drives on summer trips, magazines, both in print and on your tablet, newspapers, music on CD or to stream from your device, internet. We have computers you can use, or you can use your device on our wireless, or check out a hotspot if you're going somewhere and you need internet with you. Programs to keep the kids and yourself entertained and educated all summer long. And just on a personal note, the library was my refuge when I was a kid. I grew up very, very poor, the oldest of 5 kids. My dad always was working 2 or 3 jobs just to keep us fed and clothed. I read a lot, and the library was the place that I went. My parents couldn't afford to buy all the books that I read. I still read about 200 books a year. So if you can imagine, as a kid, I was reading more than that, and my parents, of course, could not buy 200 books a year. So I was at the library all the time. Also, it wasn't until I was in junior high that I really realized that we had financial problems, and my friends would talk about the movies. And I hadn't been to the movies in years since they closed down the drive-in as a kid because that was the only way we could afford it. And so they would talk about movies, and I would be too embarrassed to say, yeah, I don't know that movie. And so I'd go to the library, and the librarians were great. They'd help me find movies on VHS, which that's how old I am, and they would let me take them home with me. And then we could watch all the movies we wanted. My dad had very luckily, fortunately, won a VCR at a company picnic, and so that was able to make me feel equal with my friends in some ways. A library was also the first place I realized that I didn't have to live the same life that my parents had lived. Nobody in my family had ever been to college or even thought about it. And library is the first place that I realized I could go to college and I could choose differently in my life. I'm the first college graduate in my family, very happy with that. I even filled out my college application at the library on a typewriter, because that's how old I am. That was before everything was online. Now, as has been brought up in our previous meetings, people struggle in our community. They do. They struggle to pay the bills. They struggle to put food on the table. These families may be just like mine, where they were only able to pay for the bare necessities. According to recent studies, more than 25% of homes in the United States do not have internet. And I know a lot of us will think, wow, how can you live without the internet? But for some people, that is not a necessity. That is a privilege. That's what makes the library an equalizer for everyone, even in that case, because we have internet. But not just that, the library is an equalizer for everyone, and especially those who are most vulnerable in our community. The library provides free access to computers and the internet, to all the books a kid like me or a teen can read and more, to all the information and the educated staff that we have to direct people to the best resources. Okay, and no conversation about the library would be complete without mentioning one of the best outreach services we have, the Bookmobile. Charlotte's Web Mobile Children's Library is 100% funded by the Benton Trust. Charlotte Benton's dream was to provide library services to children. The Bookmobile came into service in March 2016 and has been a huge success, as you can see up there. We have stopped at over 200 places and had over 10,000 people visit the Bookmobile. We've had over 8,000 items checked out. We answer about 2,300 questions so far. The outreach in the community is another way that the library tries to engage with the community, and the Bookmobile is a very nice, new, innovative way to do that. We'll actually be at the Old Town Market this summer. Last year, it was one of our most attended public stops. We have the privilege of going to many places. People will call and they want the Bookmobile to be at a program. And so a few weekends ago, we attended the Touch a Truck event. We had 170 people climb on board to check out the library. These community events give us an opportunity for children who cannot get to the library on their own, so we bring the library to them. So just a few statistics, because I like numbers. Our visits last year were over 220,000. We checked out over 300,000 items, and this includes us, the Village Library, and the Bookmobile. We offered over 400 programs and had almost 10,000 people attend. And this is my favorite one, accessing the library from home. About 2,200 a month. People are either on our website, they are checking out a book, a movie, music from our website. They are placing a hold on an item and picking it up later in the library. So that is without even stepping foot through our doors. We are still able to help people. Also volunteer hours, because I know this was brought up and I wanted to find my number for you. We had 3,500 hours of time donated to the library last year. 27% of those volunteer hours were teen volunteers, which says a lot about the amazing teens we have in our community. With the library becoming a department, and we now have the benefit of full-time educated and professional staff, and that is part of the reason why the library is busier than ever. We're able to dedicate more of our time and energy to better serving people in more focused ways. Just so you know, we're on track to beat all of these numbers when the fiscal year ends in June. The amount of our programs, the number of people who attend, the number of items people check out, all of it continues to increase. I actually think our program attendance will be about double of last year. So thank you again, Mayor and City Council, for when you made the library a department and gave us the means to have a really good impact on people's lives. You showed everyone that you value education and literacy in our community, that you understand that the library is vital to the most vulnerable members of our community, especially for those. And this slide is for Police Chief Pat Walsh. When you don't educate people, unfortunately, one of the problems becomes incarceration. I know that the police department works hard to keep Lompoc safe, and the library strives to work just as hard to positively influence the youth that flood the library every day after school and all summer long. So if you can see that number, high school dropouts are 3.5 times more likely to be arrested. 68% of inmates have no high school diploma. We need to catch them now before somebody else does. Only 20% of California inmates demonstrate a basic level of literacy. And if you're looking at the money end of things, state costs $70,000 per year per inmate. Education is only $10,000 per year per K through 12 student. The library does what we can to bridge that gap between school and home. And I can tell you on an average day during the school year, 80 to 100 kids and teens come to the library and stay there until we close. On the Bookmobile, we see hundreds of kids every month all over town, many of whom are not able to make it to a physical library. We provide computers, tutoring, programs, volunteer opportunities, and the most important thing, we provide well-trained and educated youth services staff that have a real connection to these kids. We are determined to do our part to help our youth succeed so they don't become one of those negative statistics up there. I just want to say thank you to the community and to you all here for being so supportive. And I'm going to tell you a little secret. People do not become librarians because they like books or like to read. We become librarians because we like people and we want to help them live the best life that they possibly can. I believe personally that knowledge is something that everybody should have access to, and that it is the only thing that ever changes anyone's life for the better, is the knowledge of how to do that. I became a librarian to give back to my community, and this is my community now. As an outsider coming in, I appreciate that this is an amazing community. I have lived several other states, too many towns to count, and I've never met more supportive and welcoming people than I have in Lompoc. I am grateful to be here, and I thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Do we still have the literacy program?
We do. We contract with the Central Coast Literacy, which is through Santa Maria. They come in twice a week, and we do pay them a monthly stipend to continue services. And we do have about 80 people that are currently being tutored. And what the literacy program is that the library is to help people who don't already read in English to learn how to read. A lot of them have goals, simple stuff such as being able to pass the driving test or being able to read the labels on their medication.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, oral communication. This is your opportunity to speak to us on any item that can be before this council for up to 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name's Anne Rouget, and I'm chair of the Library Commission. If you want to have some fun, and I'm speaking to our mainly our citizens and also you council members, go over to the library some morning or afternoon during the summer. I tease the staff a lot because it's so noisy. There's all these children there, families. There are a lot of families that go over there. It's a lovely place. Miss Blyle neglected to talk about how excellent her staff has been this last couple of years. They have made programs, put very innovative programs in. Our commission, one of our other commissioners is here, Molly Gerald, and we just have so much fun over there. And if you want to have some fun, come over, check out a book, check out a movie, and first get a library card. Do you all have your library cards? It's free. And also there is a program through the state that's called Black Gold, and you can access that with your library card and find out what books you can put on hold. I do that all the time. The newer books you can put on hold, and they come within 2 or 3 days to the library. So get a library card and use it over there. It's just, this summer is just fantastic. So I appreciate Sarah and her staff. They've done a great job. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Charles Summer, Parks and Recreation Commissioner. I didn't get the memo. I'm wearing the wrong colored shirt. I'm sorry. We've had our last 2 meetings here in City Hall, which is great. I think it's a great improvement. It gives a central location for the commissions to have their meetings instead of citizens who want to go to one. They don't know where to go. Do we go to Dick Dewey Center? Do we go to Anderson? Do we go to the library? Do we go to the airport? It's a great location. Participation is still a little low. I mean, we're not city council. I'd always like to see more participation, citizens there, involved, knowing what's going on. And I've mentioned it before, and I kind of want to continue mentioning and see if it's a possibility of having our meetings, because the means are there, to have our meetings aired over KPEG. I can understand having on TAP TV would be a little bit extra, but just that those people in the public that can't come here can at least listen in, or at least a recording going online, so that there is a little more transparency, a little bit more involvement. I think it would benefit our community if a lot of people knew what was going on in our parks other than going there and showing up, because there's a lot of great information that goes out through our meetings. I feel we have a really good commission, thanks to obviously our city council members for appointing those individuals. I really like the group that I'm working with now, being there for 3 years. So, you know, exploring the possibility, directing staff to see how much that would cost. I understand that TAP TV and KPEG is an enterprise. It's not coming out of general fund, so budget issues might not be there. So just the idea of having that there. And then as a citizen, watching the last couple city council meetings, the city manager mentioned we can't grow out of this problem that's in front of us. That's understandable. We can't possibly tax ourselves out of it. We can always raise taxes and raise taxes, but I feel as though growing as a city won't solve the problem, but it'll help the problem. Cutting salaries won't solve the problem, but might help the problem. Cutting some services won't solve the problem, but it'll help the problem. If we look at all those items together, we can work through this budget issue we have in front of us for the next 3-4 budget cycles. So I would like City Council to maybe turn that to staff and say, you know, maybe we change our general plan and allow for building on the Bailey corridor. We move east and look towards the improved road that's being built right now and moving past River Park and growing as a city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Okay, seeing no one rise, we're going to close oral communication. And we're going to go on to council requests. This is item number 4, affirmation of approved utility services charges. This is Financial Services Manager Melinda Wall.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I appreciate the opportunity to bring back tonight a chance to affirm the wastewater utility rates that we presented, and it was established by Resolution 5858 in 2013. And in addition, we'd like to discuss a little bit more about the electric rates and where we are with them. Just as a reminder of what we're looking for the wastewater. We've done a lot of great things over the last 4 years because we've, are in compliance with our bond covenants that we're doing. This, if you do affirm it tonight, this gets us to the point where we can start putting money into capital projects. We have a positive cash flow for wastewater. And it'll start us getting closer to funding necessary projects in the future. So just a review of what we went over last time, talk about what happened with the customer rates and why we saw a variance in not receiving just the 10.5%. In the last year, our average units of rates for a single-family resident, which was 8, which again is over a 6-year averaging period where we knock out the highest and lowest, actually went down to 7. When we have the units go down like that, we adjust the average family residential service that comes in when they're brand new. We start them at the 7 units. And then when we have people that are coming in into an apartment, we actually give them a 17% adjustment, which will bring it down to the 6. This is why we had a fluctuation in rates. We have the rates in for next year, and while it go down a little bit, if we by 1%, if we don't adopt the rates, we will have a 9% increase in residential rates, which would help us maintain all the things that we had set forward in setting the rates. So what I like to do is go talk about the electric rates a little bit. So I have this PowerPoint presentation here. Just to give you a heads up, as far as PG&E rates near Lompoc, it's really hard to get a definite amount because you can't just call them up and say, you know, what are your rates? They'll say, well, you have to be very specific to get information from them. But we do know that this is an internet survey, that the rates near Lompoc are 0.1740 based on the time and use of rate, or it's 0.2098 base rate E1. And this is the rates that we have currently, 0.14096 per kilowatt for the first 325. This is, the 325 is important because that's the average. That's the average for a household. And according to the NCPA, Lompoc is 28% lower than PG&E. Now, this is our electric reserve policy. This is what we had calculated we need, and we actually are over it at this time. It's about $2 million. This was a combination of 2 years' growth. You can see where it was very flat between 2013 and 2015. It started to actually build up a reserve. So if we look at the amount of revenues that we get for customer services, we get about $23 million a year. We're looking at reductions. I've shown a 1%, a 3%, 5%, and 10%. You can see that if we did a 10% reduction, we'd actually go over our amounts that we have in reserve in just one year's period of time. This is the composition of our customers in 2016. You can see where our residential users, we have about 13,294, and they generate about 39% of our revenues, which is 8.6 million. Our commercial customers make up about 51%, and our municipal customers make up about 10%. So if we look at a residential user, one of the questions that was asked, well, can we do something that would compensate for the wastewater? If we increase the wastewater, could we reduce the electric by an offsetting amount? To actually do that, the averaging is 7 units. So the difference would be $6.16. To look at what we have for electric, the average, it's not the annual average, I'm sorry, it's a monthly average. I apologize. But anyway, it's $45.81. If we did a 1% reduction, it's like 46 cents. 5% reduction, it would be $2.29 per residential user. And if we did something to match the wastewater, it'd have to be about 13.4%. Some of the upcoming costs that I can't quantify tonight, but that have been brought up by the electric utility, is the things that were talked about from Tekin. And he mentioned SB 100, which targets the renewables to 50% by 2026 and 60% by 2030. And if we're looking at trying to create some of that just for 7 megawatt solar power, it's about 8.75 million. We're still preliminary numbers on that. They're still exploring it. They also brought up some things that would costs the city monies is that we have some transformers at the receiving station that are 36 years in service. And the concern is that we would need to replace those in a pretty near future. He also brought up the facts that we have recruitment and retention cost issues because we have a loss of staff and upcoming retirements, and then we have an inability to recruit new employees. This is one of the major concerns for the electric utility. So just to bring up the electric budget, you can see that it's been pretty steady from the 15-17 to the 17-19 year. They had asked for $49 million for over a 2-year period of time, and we reduced that to $48 million to make sure that the revenues match the expenditure cost. So they had several projects they wanted to do, and we asked them to wait until the next budget cycle to complete some of those projects. So what staff's recommending is authorizing the electric utility to undergo a rate study in the upcoming budget. This will allow us to look through more issues beyond just our financial concerns. The big one being the SB 100 and consideration of upcoming capital outlay and replacements. And the rate structure, we want to look at the base rates and look at the transmission costs. And this was something we did put in the budget, and that's what we're recommending tonight. And be glad to try to answer any questions.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Melinda, on this report here now, did you use municipal, commercial, and residential to
I just
compute
looked
all
at
these
residential.
Just the residential on it?
Yes.
So the amount, if we were to lower the electric rate 5%, would amount to approximately $2, and I think you said 29 cents for
That's
your
tier
average
one.
residential customer. I'm trying to really get the clarification because there's a lot of info here I just got. So
Yes.
the feasibility then, what you're saying is that we would need to reduce electrical 13.4 to match what figure on the wastewater column here?
Excuse me, yeah.
This column, on this page where it says 13.4 needed to match wastewater, which figure are we trying to match here?
The $6.
$6.16?
Yes.
So if we were to lower electrical rates 5% at 230 averaging, then that could be applied to the $6.16 then.
Yeah.
Not just residential.
Yes,
Okay.
So the total amount that we're looking at, the 23 million, is for all types of services, residential, commercial, demand meters, and
I'm
So
sorry.
then the amount would go from $6.16 to $3.87 that we would raise wastewater approximate if we lowered electricity by 230. Am I reading that correct?
if we lowered it by 5%.
City Manager, did you have a comment?
I just want to clarify something. When you said it would go to pay for, what you mean is you're just referring to what the mathematical total is on an average residential bill, not that money's going from one enterprise to another.
Right. I mean, if what you're asking for is an increase in wastewater, and what I'd asked for before was a decrease in electricity to try and, if you get a $200 bill, we raise wastewater, we lower electric, you still get a $200 bill.
Right, and I just wanted to clarify that what I believe you're trying to do is to lessen the impact on the total bill as opposed to indicating there'd be any flow of dollars from one enterprise.
Right, not intermingling the enterprises.
Thank you.
I'm just looking at the line item on the utility bill here. I see there's a lot of reasons, to not. I know no enterprise wants to give away money or, or lower rates, and accountants don't like to discount it. But on the other hand, as a ratepayer, I'm looking for something equitable for myself here. So.
And there may be a time to do that, but what we're asking to do is to maybe get that study started sooner than later and
But every study recommends big increases, you know.
Not necessarily. It just, some of the things that we want to look at are the transmission cost and the base rate cost. And those may equal out the same. Maybe they'll recommend less. But we want to be able to make sure that before we start reducing costs, that we don't do this study and then find out, okay, we have to jump back into the increases because we didn't set aside the money that we should have. Yes, we do have money. Very happy that we have this money.
Right.
But we do have upcoming expenditures, and part of the problems that we've gotten into is that we had capital projects that we knew were upcoming, and instead of thinking the long term and thinking, okay, if I save this money for these projects, then I won't have to go borrow, and then I won't have to pay that 3 to 6% on a bond when we need to go out and finance. And so it's really important that we have a study to actually document the things that we need to do. Yes, we do have a reserve that can pay for some of those costs, but what I'm asking for is to go into the study and really outline what needs to be put aside for this big solar expense that's going to be coming up. So that's
So we're saving money for a project we don't know how much it's going to cost.
Well, we know it's going to cost about $7 or $8 million to get into like solar paneling.
That's for the 2026.
Yes, but you're
So
gonna,
what
it's not that far away.
No, but ratepayers now are paying for a project that others will receive benefit from.
They'll be receiving the benefit from it.
But people that aren't paying will move here and receive the same benefit. So you see what I'm saying? I'm just trying to really make this an equitable item, and I'll let somebody else take a shot.
Councilmember Osborne.
My question is actually to Councilman Starbuck. I see the math, and it's just a $6.16 increase on those with 7-unit average, and to argue to bring them down $2 or $3 on their electrical side and potentially lose out on our building and saving for infrastructure needs, whether they're current infrastructure needs or future infrastructure needs, does not seem the smartest long-term solution. I realize you're trying to reduce impact to the current, but a $6 change on the 7 units, I went and looked at my own wastewater. I've been here long enough, so my 6-year average is based on my actual average, not the winter averaging of someone who is potentially not here long enough to do it. So this is the default average, and it only takes my bill up $4. So I think that we're trying to solve a short-term problem that's going to impact a long-term issue that we consistently run into of not having enough dollars for infrastructure because we don't think long-term. I get that some individuals won't benefit from whatever the 2026 or 2030 infrastructures are, but there are those of us who will benefit, and you need to pay in both for current and for future. I mean, that's part of what being a city is and providing that infrastructure and providing that. So I'm just curious why the $6 and trying to offset $6 is such a huge concern for you.
It's pretty simple, 21.5%, 10.5, 10.5, 10.5. It's been going on how many years? What has been the total percentage of increase compounded on that wastewater alone? It's only $6. I hate to use the word only, but with an initial, what was our initial rate increase? 20%?
21% the first year.
21%.
This is the last year of a 5-year increase.
Yeah, last year of the 5 years, and it's nothing been below 10%.
And again, this was not something that council could help because the infrastructure cost was over the amount that we originally first as a city thought it was going to be. And
I'm paying more for sewer than I am water. And I mean, it's like you say, only $6, but we have been a very aggressive rate increase on a very aggressive plant.
Which I understand. The very aggressive plan was as a result of this being an unfunded mandate and us having to set it right with those that we took bonds out with, and we've been doing that. But as part of that, the idea was to get it under control aggressively and save for potential not needing to go after these bonds for future issues. So my concern is finish out our 5th year, accept what the recommendation was, and unless we've done a rate study on electric, not to mess with electric because it's going to begin to have its own issues as well. So again, I know it's been rough on our community. I know it's been rough making this adjustment, but it was needed based on our bond requirements and these unfunded mandates. And I think the fact that we're in the final year and this is the last of it until we do new rate studies, if it's mandated, there is some concern when you read through the report talking about potentially not meeting the funding, even though the hope was during the 5th year for wastewater. So there's concerns that not doing what's needed to be done and starting to mess with other utilities that we haven't properly assessed through the proper rate changes is a bad idea. Again, trying to think long-term, not just short-term solutions for what I realize is an impact, but there's some issues that we need to address by staying the course with what was recommended to pull us out of these bond issues.
I'll just say that electrical is a lot healthier, even after the 3% reduction. What was that, 2012? We reduced rates down, 3%. We still exceeded our reserve, and, I just feel that we owe the ratepayers something. We should give a little to get a little, and that's the whole thought process I'm using on here after, basically doubling wastewater rates.
I'd just like to add a little bit of information to this concerning the electric rates. As we all know, this past week, we, the city of Lompoc, had a failure in our water treatment plant. Thank you to our employees, we got it back up and running relatively quick. But also last week, Northern California Power Agency, NCPA, which we get our electricity from, had a major failure in one of their hydroelectric plants, and they had to bring down the entire plant for about a week, maybe 10 days, at a cost of about $100,000 a day, in which we, being one of 15 members, we, the city of Lompoc, are paying part of that $100,000 a day. So there's a reason why we have reserves. We are now going to be one of the 15 cities that are going to repay that. The infrastructure does break down at times. The 2026 50% renewable is going to be very expensive. And granted, there's going to be some people that will be moving here after it's paid for. There is a proposal in the state of California that at some point they're going to ask for 100% renewable in the state of California. So you think your electricity is expensive now, it's going to get more expensive. Another thing, a comment was made last week that natural gas is very cheap. Well, natural gas is still expensive. I mean, it's still very inexpensive, but the transportation of natural gas has got to be so expensive that we again are one of 15 members that own the Lodi Energy Center, which has a fast start gas-powered generator. We're not even using that anymore because the price of transportation of the natural gas is so expensive. It doesn't matter how cheap the natural gas is, it's the transportation of it. So we've got a $400 million Lodi Energy Center that we're literally not using right now. It's been brought down. Cost of energy is going to be going up. Cost of electricity is going to be going up. It's important that we do not tamper with our reserves because we're going to be paying for it in the years to come. Just be aware of that. Councilmember Starbuck.
Just to be clear, don't we have a reserve with NCPA separate of the reserve we hold here at the city?
Absolutely.
So just there are different reserves in electric.
If I may, the reserve at NCPA is part of our reserve policy. So the majority of what's made up of what was in the graph is at NCPA.
So the majority is here. So I just want everyone to be aware that coming down the road, all it takes is another one of these failures, and the equipment at NCPA is aging just like ours. Okay, but $100,000 a day is what it was costing NCPA to be down at that hydroelectric plant. So just be aware of that when we make our decisions this evening.
So basically, when it's running, we're making good money for ourselves.
I think we should look back at the city councils back 26 years ago that got us into NCPA and thank them. I mean, because it has been a fantastic investment for the city of Lompoc. So, okay, Councilmember Mosby.
You know, Councilmember Starbuck, I can understand that you want to, you know, if we take a little, we want to give a little, and understanding that. And I think in the next item that's coming up when we're discussing the suspension of water rates, one of the thought processes of moving that way was one of the give and take aspects. And I know you were looking at electrical, and the numbers that are coming back here we'd have to do such a substantial movement, and a lot of the unforeseen that's coming down. Like you hear some of the stories coming, and why I don't think it's totally fair that people today are paying for some future. Just remember back in 1968 when the ratepayers got us into this program, so we can thank the ratepayers from 1968 for getting us into the NCPA. And we're gaining and seeing benefit from that. So I get what you're saying, but I think the next item on the list coming down is where we can do what you're asking to do.
Anyone else? Okay, we're going to open this up to the public.
My name is Tim Smith, Chair of the Utility Commission. And good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, and fellow citizens. On June 12th, the Utility Commission had its regular meeting, and they asked that I come forward and reiterate our position on the wastewater rates, that we do approve of the city's plan unanimously, and would ask that you go ahead and proceed with that. Also, if you recall, our recommendation was also concerned with some items in the capital budget in particular, namely that we spend, that the staff look at juggling some of the less important capital items, and so that it could address the repairs and replacement of some of the more critical sewer mains that are in the city. Staff is working on this task. They gave us some information on that, and I believe that we're pretty confident that they'll be able to arrive at a reasonable and effective number for the sewer main replacements. These are necessary to meet the state requirements that are outlined in State Water Resources Control Board Order number 2006-3-DWQ. It requires the city to have a sewer system maintenance plan that contains an inspection, rehabilitation, and replacement schedule, complete with a capital program that addresses these problem areas, and a time schedule for both the work required and the development of funding to complete that work. In other words, the whole shebang. You got to have the whole package in this plan. In our plan that was approved by a prior city council on October 7th in 2014 and submitted to the state, for this budget cycle, the wastewater budget needs to have approximately $1 million available for this sewer main replacement. And so that's what they're trying to target, and we support them on their efforts. So we would agree with going forward with this plan tonight. Thank you for your consideration.
Anyone else? Seeing no one's rise, we're going to close public comment, bring it back to the council. Anyone wish to make a motion? Councilmember Osborne.
I'll make a motion to affirm the approved utility service charges for wastewater for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Okay, that is, so that's item number 1, is that correct? Okay. Okay, I need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's
But the understanding that, as the speaker said, what we're having to do.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Let's vote. And that passes 4-1. Okay, thank you. Going to move on to item number 5, which is adoption of resolution 6128(17) approving suspension of the fiscal year 2017-2018 increase in monthly water service charges. And I guess that's Melinda again.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Tonight we just need to have you adopt a resolution 612817, which is attached, that suspends the fiscal year 2017-2018 increases in monthly water service charges and maintain the rates that were established in resolution number 605216, or provide us with an alternative direction. Just one note that I'd like to mention is that we would have to reduce our capital expenditures that we had budgeted for in working with the water super. I don't know, are you a superintendent in name? Bob Whistle. We're working with figuring out what we're going to need for capital, but we'll still have approximately $3.7 million that will be going for water line replacements, distribution replacements. So, thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Councilman Osborne.
So by not doing our expected increases and waiving any increase for this year, what you're saying is it's impacting our ability to potentially repair and build out current water line infrastructure issues?
There are capital items that we had planned to get full board on, and because of this reduction, we're looking at reducing some of our estimated amounts that we're going to do for water distribution mains. Well 10 had been pulled out, so that is something that will be done in the future, and there may be some treatment basin upgrades that we'll have to postpone until the future.
And then secondly, in order to have any future rate increase, we actually need to do another rate study for water, because this was the 5th year of a current water study, and there is no 6th year. So this ends effectively any future rate increases based on this current structure, and a 6th year doesn't actually exist, correct?
This isn't correct. We do still have the basis for the Prop 218 that it will allow us to go up to. We're just asking for a suspension, then that if we want to, if we can, we'll come back in the future to ask for maybe the rates to be adjusted. So the rates that we did not adjust, if we need to, we'll be coming back again and asking. And we do want to look at another water study just to make sure we're on a good path. We have had a lot of issues. It's not just to change rates, it's to change things like what's the base rate and what's the variable rate that we may want to look at in the future, and we will come to council to look at that when the time's appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Melinda, so why are you asking for this suspension?
Because we don't have the suspension, the resolution, then the rates that we adopted in 2013 would go into effect. So if you didn't want the adjustment in rates, then we need to put a resolution forward to adopt the rates as they were in the prior year. Oops, sorry.
That's okay. This is just bringing back Brad Wilkie, Finance Director, this is just bringing back the resolution affirming what your action was at the meeting, I think, of May 16th. So it's not us asking for the suspension, it was the direction from council to suspend the last item. So.
Okay, anyone else? Councilmember Starbuck?
I think for clarity that the only increase that this resolution has in it is the meter. It's not the units, correct?
No, that's not correct.
This is just
this
the rate.
is keeping everything the way it was last year. There's no base unit increase, no volumetric increase. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we're going to open this up to the public. Seeing no one rise, we'll bring it back to the council. Discussion? Motion? Councilmember Mosby.
Make a motion to approve and adopt resolution number 6128, parentheses 17.
And I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Let's vote. And that passes 4-1. Okay. Item number 6. Review changes in 2013 edition of the Fire Code and California Building Standards.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council, and citizens. We are bringing back after a staff recommendation. First off, to review the changes between the 2013 and 2016 building and fire codes. And you do have an attachment number 1 and 2, which highlights the changes in red, so hopefully it's a little bit easier to see. And our second staff recommendation is to adopt the ordinance numbers 1632 and 1633, which would adopt the amendments that you see before you for the 2016 edition of the Fire Code and the California Building Code as amended. So a little background for both these ordinances, 1632 and 1633, were first introduced at our first reading here at February 21st. At that time, City Council directed staff to set the required public hearing for their adoption on March 21st. That public hearing was opened and closed at the meeting. After that hearing, rather than adopting those ordinances, the City Council directed staff to provide documents showing the differences between the 2013 California Fire Code and Building Code as adopted by the City Council and the proposed changes with the 2016 Fire and Building Codes. As stated in previous staff reports regarding this matter, the California Fire Code and the Building Code are adopted by the state by order of the California legislation. Once adopted by the state, those standards have the full force of the law and take effect 180 days after publication. The effective date for the 2016 editions of the Fire and Building Code was January 1st, 2017. Cities and counties throughout the state are required to enforce both the 2016 fire and building provisions on and after that date, January 1st, 2017. Cities and counties have the authority to modify those standard provisions to more stringent standards through local amendments due to local topographic, climatic, or geologic conditions. The purpose of the California Fire and Building Codes is to establish minimum requirements necessary to protect fire, safety, and the general welfare of the public by regulation and governing the safeguarding of life and property from fire and explosion, hazards arising from the storage, handling, and use of hazardous substances, materials, and devices, and from the conditions hazardous to life or property in the occupancies of buildings and premises in the city, providing the issuance of permits and collection of fees. Attachments 1 and 2 to this report show the changes between the city-adopted 2013 Fire and Building Code and the changes proposed in the 2016 same codes. As you will be seen and previously communicated, those changes are minimal. The fiscal impact for these actions will result in no direct financial impact to the city's general fund. The cost to administer both the fire and building codes are captured through the city's master fee schedule, permits, and plan review fees. Our conclusion is the proposed adoption of the 2016 fire and building codes is consistent with the fire department's mission and the city's desire to protect public health and safety and property values. The proposed 2016 California Fire and Building Codes do not very significantly change from the 2013 Fire and Building Codes. Based on the foregoing, the council is urged to adopt both ordinances, 1632 and 1633. And myself and the building official are here for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Mosby.
I got a question on page 3 of 23. At 105.7. Starting off with number 1, it says landscaping, irrigation, field modification. And you're referencing back to 105.7 in itself, which I can see why we would do a lot of that in the state code, because that references things like compressed gas, battery systems, cryogenic fluids. fire alarm detection systems and all that, but why are we bringing up number one when somebody to install or alter landscaping in the wildland urban interface?
That's a very good question. As we expand, which is vital for our economic development, we're encroaching into places like the Burton Mesa Preserve, places that are known high fire hazard areas, extreme fire hazard areas, where fire threatens our community. We need the ability to help and mitigate the landscape so that it's fire resistant. We don't need an increased fuel source up against areas where we can't use or mitigate fuels. So that gives us, as we build out a community, for new development, we control those, we'd call them islands or pockets of fuel. You'll see them in some areas where it's not mitigated, and the willows are coming out of fencing and whatnot. If we have a provision where we start with the developer and it's all ahead of everything and we have smart growth, we avoid having no buffer zone for when a fire hits and threats our community.
So I guess if the verbiage was in there for a new development, but the way I'm looking at this here is, because the houses on the side over here are in a wildland interface. They're on the side of the hill here.
Are you referencing near Foothill Estates or where you?
Yes, anybody within that dimension. When we talked about fireworks, like it was a quarter mile from the edge of over here. And if somebody was to alter their landscaping, then they would have to get a permit. See what I'm saying? If it referenced new development, if you said new development, I could see you have your fingers in it. But the kind of way I'm reading this is a homeowner's is if your grandma's out planting a daisy bush in her front yard and she's in this wildland urban interface, she needs to come get a permit because she's actually altering her landscaping.
Actually, the code, that's not the intent of the code and how it would be interpreted. The intent is to establish wild and urban interfaces for new growth. So where we have new growth. We're not going in, there's no buffer zone, there's no common landscape over in the side of the community you're talking about. When we do have smart growth, such as Burton Mesa, we're looking at 100-foot buffer zones, and part of that is built into the resiliency of that new community.
So maybe if you have that in there, that verbiage for new developments, maybe if you had that in there.
I'll ask our legal team, too, for our interpretation. Is any comment?
Well, if I'm understanding right, first of all, this provision has been in the code since 2013 or 2014 when it was adopted. And if the fire department and building department have been interpreting it the way it's being explained to you, then that's the interpretation. And so it only applies as she has just indicated.
Well, is there a way that we can add something that says new development? I think that would take out a level of interpretation if you had that in there. I wouldn't even be asking a question if I saw it said new development. I wouldn't even be asking why, but and not everybody interprets the same.
I would suggest that a better approach, because we're now on a second reading of this ordinance, if we make that change to this ordinance, we're going to have to bring it back for a reintroduction. My suggestion would be to have the fire department staff and the building department staff issue an interpretation memo that says this is what this means. And what they'll say it means is what they just told you they said it means.
We have.
Hey, how about an interpretation memo? I'd feel much better with that.
That's what we were just discussing. This occurs with all different codes as delivered by the state, both the building and the fire side. And for us, they go to the state fire marshal. They have symbol boards for building. And they issue a letter of clarification or memo of interpretation, as this is the official interpretation of that particular section.
And when would that be supplied? Would that be supplied to council, or is that?
They'll give you a copy of it when it's done, and it'll probably be done in the next day or two.
Okay. And if I could carry on as well on 109.4.
Do you have a page number?
It's page number 4. And one of the things I asked was when we went back is what was difference with the state code as well as what we'd done 13 and 16. And going back to the state code, I noticed what it says in here when you reference this. It allows you to, on 109.4, it says specify offense. And it allows you to set an amount, and it allows you to set number of days. So the council appears allowed to do something like that. And what I noticed I was reading the Santa Barbara News Press, and for the Carpinteria Summerlin in the same area, they're considering this to be an infraction and $250 in 10 days. Every 10 days you do it. In our case, we're kind of criminalizing this. We're making it a misdemeanor, $1,000, and you can do that every day. Each day a violation continues, so you could impose $1,000 every day. So I'm just wondering, why are we more aggressive than our neighbors are? In, as I see here, state allows us to specify and fill in the blank. So is there a reason why we seem to be a little more aggressive than some of our neighbors?
We don't actually impose any type of fine or anything until we've basically had some type of failure or breakdown in communication. The goal of the codes is to guide and to educate, not to imprison or to pose fines. But in the event that we can't come to a mutual agreement, an understanding, or assist a customer, there has to be some type of recourse that we could get the desired effect. In one instance in the city, we had to declare a public nuisance, and we have a receivership going on to fix something in town. Those are extreme cases, and they're avoidable at all levels, except for a possible one failure in a long history. We haven't imposed any type of fire code imprisonments. I mean, I've only had to get one inspection warrant in the past, 3 years? So it's really something that is a failure of education. But when when it's needed, it's needed. So what is that threshold that makes the community listen? That might be a great question for PD. What is the effective tool to assist others to realize that it's super important to follow a guideline? But at some point, there has to be maybe a consequence. That's the last thing we want to use, though.
Well, there's a consequence, as Carpinteria Summerlin does. They have it as an infraction of $250 that they can impose every day. It just seems we're overly aggressive. I was watching the new Supreme Court justice up there, and he's saying, we're criminalizing everything. We're taking everything to this level. And you're bringing this up to the level of a misdemeanor. And again, I say our neighbors are doing this. And it's also, when I actually looking back, 780 pages of fire code, I was going back and reviewing it here. And I saw that we had the opportunity to do that. And that's kind of one of the items I was hitting on before, is I think that should have been brought into the codes, that we had an opportunity to fill in the blank. And I just believe we're maybe acting a little too aggressive here. I understand when you need to have that ability to do that, but our neighbors are responding a lot differently than we are. That was one area I had, as well as, again, it would come down to 111.4 as well, where we reference on a fail to comply, we call it a misdemeanor, where as per state, we're allowed, it says amount, so we're allowed to fill in the blanks as well in that same position. Also in 113.3, which is on page 5 of 23, we're allowed to put the fee in. It says additional fee established. So we're allowed to put the fee in where we have established it to be a fee, double the fee.
Actually, that's a different, you're talking about permits, and that would fall into more red tag, stop work, or working outside your scope of permits, not establishing fees on fines for some type of violation.
Right, but we would be able, according to looking at the state, we would be a level that says additional fee established. So we can establish that fee. We don't have to just put in there double fee. And the reason why I'm looking at this is it could become so egregious. We did our fee schedule adjustment with a conditional use permit. If somebody was doing something where they needed a CUP, you could get to the level where it's just, out of there. And I wonder if there's a limit. The county has a limit.
This is specifically for fire codes. It doesn't have it doesn't apply to use permits or fall under planning.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear on that. And perhaps for the misdemeanors, or did you have something?
On a 11114, did you have an answer on that, why we're doing that as a?
Can you clarify your question?
Well, if, I made copies of this. Might as well pass it on. Because it says, it allows us to put an amount in there. State code has it blank in parentheses, says amount. So we would allow it to put that amount aspect in there and the failure to comply. And we've seemed to, you're saying we do the minimum, and it looks to me like we're making some misdemeanors out of a little bit more aggressive than what our neighbors are doing in just posing the question out there. I'm seeing there's a little bit more that's...
Without surveying or specifically talking to CARP that you're referencing in the paper, I really couldn't speak to comment of how they demonstrated
They published this in the Santa Barbara News Press, all their changes that they put in the back in there. So that's what I was referencing off as a public document that was available, so.
And typically for our failure to comply fees, we do actual cost recovery only. We could set a $1,000 fee on there, and if it only took an hour of staff time to get them in to get a permit, then we wouldn't have charged them $1,000. We'd charge them the actual cost only.
And,
our fee could be quite less than if we put a fixed number in there, for instance.
And again, a level of my questioning is when I was reading through all the code and reading there, I was kind of surprised when actually looks like we have an opportunity to do something here, and we were doing, and that's kind of where I was getting at back in March, is that being able to see what we were allowed to interpret or not interpret, and is there something we can do? And just because we did it in 13, and we said, well, we did it in 13, so we do it in 16, I thought it was important that we see state allowed us to make a level interpretation ourselves up here on the dais.
If I may, through the mayor, there's no question that council has the option to do whatever policy they want. Again, this is what we were asked to do was bring to you the differences between 13 and 16, and that's what we've done. If now what you want to do is rethink what you did in 13, that's certainly your right also. However, to do that, we'll need to come back for another reintroduction of this ordinance, and it's been pretty late to getting it adopted. And in addition to that, because these are municipal code violations, my office would be prosecuting them, and I have never been asked to prosecute any person for any misdemeanor on this. And what's difficult for that is I can't prove a negative, but maybe because these things are here, people will comply better, so we don't have to get involved.
So is that another one of those letters of interpretation you could come up with, or what do you call it?
No, that wouldn't be a letter of interpretation.
Okay. Well, I mean, your statement right there gave me another angle and level. You said you never had to, but it had the ability to, and because you have the ability, people are complying.
That's very possible.
Okay. And my reason is to bring it up for the rest of the members of the council to see that there are other opportunities out there. Not trying to stonewall, not trying to put sticks in the mud. I'm just trying to do my due diligence as well. So I'll leave it to other people for discussion.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll open this up to public. You have public comment on this?
Mayor, council persons, it's kind of a statement and leading up to some clarification. So in section A102.71 conflicts, it clearly states that the fire code, when it references other codes, for instance, building codes, takes precedent. So I understand that it takes precedent. It goes further in section 1.173 regarding conflicts, that if there is a conflict with Title 24, that the most restrictive of the two apply. But then it makes an exception for single-family dwellings and duplexes, and then it gives some other types of occupancies that are residential in nature. So then further along in section 1-11.212, this is very, very confusing at times. I don't envy the fire personnel that have to read through this. It says, any person may request a code interpretation from the state fire marshal relative to the intent of any regulation or provision adopted by the state. How does my question is, how does a resident go about doing that? Then moving on really quickly on items that were covered in other times but relate to this code that you're adopting is permits. It references an item on permits, and we had this discussion previously, so I'd like to get some clarification on that as well. It says, application or notice to the fire code official is not required for ordinary repairs to structures, equipment, of systems. Such repairs shall not include the cutting away, and it gives what it doesn't include. But there was that discussion we had with these types of issues formally, where we were having to get a permit for everything. And it defines here in section 105 permits, two types, operational and then construction permits, which our marshal has just previously discussed. And then lastly, we had another discussion on construction documents. You had quite a bit of the building industry coming in and asking if it was required for certain construction documents. And it does state very specifically that construction documents and their submittals are a requirement, but again, it gives an exception, which wasn't discussed. The fire code official is authorized to waive the submission of construction documents and supporting data not required to be prepared by a registered design professional if it is found that the nature of the work applied for is such that the review of construction documents is not necessary to obtain compliance with this code. And then just lastly, really quick, is it calls for a Board of Appeals. What's that process and how does that work with the Board of Appeals? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment. Councilmember Mosby.
Speaking of a Board of Appeals, 108 has a Board of Appeals. Did we have one in the past? The county has one. Do we no longer have a Board of Appeals?
The county has a standing one. We have one as available as something comes in that would request a Board of Appeals. If we couldn't find a solution that worked for all parties, that would be an alternative that we could stand up a Board of Appeals at that time. We don't keep a running seated Board of Appeals staffed until needed.
Is that because there's really no need for one?
We've had maybe 2 requests in the past at least couple years, and we have had positive resolution with both community members without ever needing to go to Board of Appeals, where they were happy with the solution.
Because in reading what it says, it says there shall be, and it is hereby created, a Board of Appeals. So that's, we just...
And when is needed, that's when we'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Then I'll entertain a motion.
I have a little more discussion. I mean, is this the level that we want to go? I know I hear from the city attorney why an argument for why we should keep that in there, but then I watched the Supreme Court justice being interviewed, and his comments and statement is, why are we criminalizing everything? And I understand you need to have teeth in the law, but I also, when I see what our neighbors are doing and making infractions in $250, I kind of wonder, are we overreaching? And we made a statement, we're doing the bare minimum, when I find out the neighbors are doing a lot less than what we are. And I gather you bring it back, we got to, and maybe I need to have a little more of a sidebar with the city attorney and bring it back as a council request, which would probably be easier so we can get things on the table on it. But it looks to me like we're grabbing pretty hard and we're putting some hard teeth, and it's something that's hardly ever been used. And maybe it hasn't been used because people are afraid it might get used. But then again, is that we are? I mean, Carpentry and Summerlin were able to do it a lot less aggressively. So, I mean, that's, I don't know if anybody else wants to discuss and go with some other angle. It just kind of grabs me a little aggressive.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Starbuck.
Tell you what, first day on the job, why don't we ask the new building official what his thoughts are on this, just hearing what we've said.
Well, if I may, in particular, council members, Mayor, Just for a matter of perspective, seeing that I come from I come from the city of Santa Monica, plus the county of Los Angeles, and I hope I'm not stating the obvious. And the language in Chapter 1 is a state code chapter, or may I even say it's even published by the International Code Council. It's used nationwide. The blanks that you mentioned, Council Member, that is therefore a jurisdiction to fill in, and that is based on as an administrative item. Certainly, you can compare regionally fines and penalties regionally, but it's based on an individual city's enforcement of the code. It's based on cost as that operation would deem fit for that particular jurisdiction. And I would say that in my area where I'm from, the costs vary widely, and it's based on violations of historical experience. And I could say that in a very large jurisdiction that I once worked in, the county of Los Angeles, we did have those blanks filled in, but as the fire marshal mentioned, it was rarely used because the building department and fire department has the measures to avert that level exactly. Certainly both the building department, fire department doesn't want to become an enforcement arm so much as it is a compliance arm. We want to work with the citizens, we want to work with the contractors. And only in cases of very egregious, almost a total ignorance of the law or total disregard for the law in life safety do we use these extreme measures. But it's there for reference, and the numbers that we would fill in is what we feel that we need to enforce the code administratively. So I hope that helps in a kind of a general explanation with perspectives outside of the area. But certainly the perspectives are statewide with that Chapter 1 item.
I'll give you an A on that response.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Vega.
Just for clarity, Councilman Mosby, where were you kind of leading to? I kind of understand that you're saying, hey, we're comparing what Summerlin and them are doing here, and was there a direction you wanted to go in?
Well, it caught me off guard because I keep hearing we were doing the minimum, and then when I read this, I said, wait a minute. And then when I look back in state law, I find out that it says fill in the blank. It caught me off wondering which way we were going to go. And hearing the discussion here, I'll be watching and see if we need to. I don't necessarily think at this time we need any further action, but
that's what I was
everybody
asking.
be aware
I was asking
that
because you were making the comparison of $250 to a $1,000 fine,
right,
and possible misdemeanor. So I'd like to make sure that whatever we're doing is we're going to make sure we do something.
Right. And I think we
or
need to
not.
be aware that there is that opportunity. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. And after the discussion here, I'm willing to move forward with the resolution as written.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion? Councilman Osborne.
I move that we accept the changes in Ordinance 163217 and 163317, Fire Code and the Building Standards Code.
I'll go ahead and second that then.
Just for the record, we're actually adopting those two ordinances.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Let's vote. That passes 5-0. Okay, the council has been going for 3 hours. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Okay, we're going to continue our meeting. We'll move on to item number 7, which is discussion of possible approval of the 2017-19 biannual budget. Yes, Mr. Weimiller.
Thank you, Mayor. When we last left from the last budget discussion, the City Council had made 3 requests of staff, and so we're here to report back on those 3 inquiries for information. One of them was discussion about the viability of issuing pension obligation bonds to pay for the unfunded liability with CalPERS. One was the costs of city council pay, health benefits, and mileage, and how that's distributed. And then the final one was taking what was on page 138 within the draft budget, adding back in the support for other agencies, and then taking a 4%, 5%, and 6% reduction scenario on those to see where that would leave us standing. So first, I'm going to start with the pension obligation bonds, then I'll turn it over to Dean Albert to handle the other 2 items. So as to the pension obligation bonds and your request on those, in our research and talking with our bond consultants at KNN and other places, they basically are telling us there is no money to be saved by going the route of pension obligation bond. That would have been viable some number of years ago. That would have been a good strategy. But in the wake of what they call the post-Stockton era, part of when Stockton filed their bankruptcy, part of what was declared and handled through the bankruptcy were their pension obligation bonds, which led a lot of bond investors shortchanged as a result of that. And now the investment community is very wary on pension obligation bonds. So their instruction, their feedback to us was basically there's no savings available to be had there, and we probably wouldn't be able to sell an issue like that. With that, I'm going to ask Dean to cover the other 2 areas, the costs of the City Council and the 4%, 5%, and 6% exercise.
Good evening, Dean Alborough, County Revenue Manager. June 8th, the request was to do some scenarios, like Patrick said, to add back the contributions to the nonprofits, to remove the taxes, the new taxes, and then to do 3 scenarios with a 4% budget cut, 5% budget cut, and a 6% budget cut. One of the things I wanted to do is just real briefly walk you through what I do when I do a 10-year projection. Me and Brad developed this, and the reason that we did it was so we could show the impacts in 13-15, what CalPERS was imposing then, and funny, we're back doing the same thing. So it actually helps, now too. When we do a budget, the first thing I do is I take and I make what I call a baseline, and that's this budget. And I don't adjust that, but I apply a number of assumptions. And if you see the assumptions on there, you can see the salary assumptions, projected salary savings from vacancies. If you're wondering why that's a negative number, there's 3 components in the salary savings. One is, of course, when a person leaves. One is when they go from a top step and we replace them with a lower step. But we're also seeing a benefit from CalPERS because the normal costs from Tier 1 to PEPRA, we see a savings. Eventually that'll go to 0, and it'll eventually go to positive because the salary numbers will go up and we'll see more savings once people leave. But if you look at the dark blue, I guess that color is, you can see the impact of what CalPERS is imposing upon us with the incremental percentage increase year over year. And we also do the same thing with the revenues. I wanted to make sure that this is the same scenario that you're seeing inside the budget book, so we can do a comparative. So these are the assumptions, and I'll put this on the webpage when tomorrow, and so if you guys want to look at them, and you also have a copy, of course. It's kind of hard to see, so but you'll see the budget cut is right here that I'm adding to the budget, and you can see it probably a little bit better on the graph. If you can see, this is a, oops, sorry, hit the wrong button. You see the 4% cut, you'd have to, if you didn't touch salaries, you'd have to decrease it 14%. You'd have to decrease it in the first year, 2.8 million, and in the last year of the budget cycle, 3.7 million. Then I did the same thing for a 5-year. And you can see there that on the 5% cut, you'd have to do 18% or 3.6 million or 4.7 million in the last year to maintain that at a 5% cut. Then you can see what that looks like on the graph. You can start to see that the fund balance is starting to come back. And then on the final request was a 6%. And you can see that's going to be pretty close to a 4.3 million cut in the current year. And if you didn't touch salaries, it'd be 22%. And the final, to maintain that, would be close to 5.9 million. That being said, that's really all I did, is just apply that against what was in the book.
Councilmember Mosby.
Could you go back to the numbers chart with the 6% cut, please? Now, the number in expenses, the number in expenses, how does that compare to the previous year's number? It's not on the chart, but I'm just saying, are we using the same across, or did we have an increase? The 17-18 estimate number in the expense, is that the same as the previous year, or did we increase that?
Are you talking about the first one right here?
Yeah, the 24, the 9, the 870. Not the. I didn't bring my laser. I didn't bring my toy. I'm sorry.
You want to use mine?
the 24, the 9 million. That personal. So these numbers here, how did they compare to the previous year?
I have to go back and look at it. You are seeing increases, I could tell you that.
Did
I
you
don't
use
know
this-
the exact numbers and the exact, like incremental increase between the two, but.
So what I'm getting at, so we had, potentially we had an increase to come into those numbers. So we had an increase, and then we put a 6% after we had an increase of some sort, whatever, you don't know the number exactly what we did.
Yeah, no, but keep in mind too that the 2 years here, those are what's in our budget book. That's our baseline.
Right, but we approximately had, from looking at it, we probably had a 1 or 2% increase from the previous year.
Sure, yeah.
So we had a 2% increase, let's just say, because that's kind of what we carried across anyway.
It never goes down.
Right. So we had a 2% increase, and then we had a 6% decrease. So it's kind of a net 4%. Because we bumped up 2, and then we came down 6.
Yeah, but like I said, keep in mind that the first 2 years is our baseline.
Right.
So the scenario or the assumptions are applied against all these years here.
Right. And understanding that it's not like every year you have to make the 6%. It's just that you have a reset, and if you, by having the reset and moving forward on the reset, you come through. You're not doing a 6% compounded every year, correct?
That's one way. Yeah, but yes, but the component that you're taking out is normally going to have an incremental increase based upon CPI and cost,
Right, so we have an approximately 6% cut the first year. The next year, we're looking at, on average, about a 2% increase, and the next year we're having a 2% increase, and the next year it's a 2% increase, approximately. But we only have one true reset of 6%.
Yeah, and like I said, if you go back to the beginning, I'm applying these assumptions. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but, and keep in mind that here I'll go back to the 6%. When you're looking at this projection, this is like almost $400 million. To make not to meet 1% of something, you're going to be off $4 million. I mean, this keeps me up at night.
You talking about the expense portion? Is that what you mean?
The whole model, yeah, because you're talking 10 years, and you're talking,
$383 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
$385 million. It's kind of like Arnold Palmer put it, deceptively simple, endlessly complicated. This model, as things move, it moves 10 different things.
Yeah, I did a lot of moving with it the last couple of days.
Yeah, and I thank you for that.
So what I'm looking at, and I know what I was asking was, I know it was an exercise, and I know it was a number to see there, but there is a potential, and we see positive revenues in both the 5% and the 6% cut, and I know it's tough, and again, we did have a 2% up approximately, and they were going 6 down, so it's actually a 4% net.
I think the biggest thing that concerns me when you do a 5% cut is the effect it has on the revenues. A lot of stuff is allocated out. If you move something 10%, you're going to also move your revenues 5% because 50% of it's allocated out.
Or 60 or 80%. Yeah,
exactly.
Depending. I know it's a very complex, and we've discussed this, the allocation aspects, because some positions are funded by enterprises, some are 100% general fund, and it is a very complex formula. I can appreciate that. I've read your cost allocation books going back a little bit of time to see.
And you put 200 pages of a budget book and 200 pages of a cost allocation, you try and make a model that reduplicates everything or duplicates everything. It's very difficult. But it's just an idea. This does give you a very good idea of where things are going and trends and patterns, and you can make some very good analysis. I think it's a very good tool.
And I think it's important to see that if we were to do that, and if you look on the total expense line, or you can see that if we reduce down to $32 million, which was, how much what was the CAFA report number that we had approximately for the end of fiscal year 2016?
I think it was 31 million. Are you talking?
Yeah, it's a little bit less than that number.
We did come in a little below what
so we're
our
actually looking at
were.
Our expenses would be
on both sides.
Our expenses would actually be a little bit larger than what we had the fiscal year 2016. It's not like we're asking for this great travesty when you look at this chart. And shortly down the road, within 2 years, you're back to where you were and what was being asked, because on page 138, the first year you're looking at 34.4, so you're actually a year or two away, you're back to where the numbers were. So, and when I was looking at this and asking for this, it was kind of a level of reset. And mind you, this puts all the nonprofits, this puts the museum back in, correct?
Yes.
And the chamber back in. Mm-hmm. So this is a calculation putting all of this item back into the table, and if we had it. And I know it's not an easy item to do, and one of the ways I got the idea to do this is I've been watching the county budget hearings, and well, I tell you what, you want to have some painful time, watch their 8 and 10 hour budget hearings and what they're doing, and they had a lot of heavy lifting, and I made a copy of a memorandum that they put out December 21st to all their departments. So I made copies for what they did, and they did a 5% reduction is what they're doing this year. They're doing a 4% next year.
I know they're due. I've been trying to follow their stuff, but a lot of, it's hard for me to.
Well, there's a copy of the memorandum. There might be even extra, but they did a 5%, 4%, 3%, and then a 2%. I mean, they're doing a significant, and that's what made me think that we could look at this and see maybe we need to look at doing this and doing a reset, because we have, we've had over the last several years, our general fund expenses have gone up. It wasn't long ago, our annual expense was about 25 million, about 4 or 5 years ago. And now we're scratching at the door. Well, in this book here, we're scratching at the door at 34 million. So we've gone up in about the last 5 years, approximately $9 million.
I know everything that I've been trying to find on the county is that they've been cut social services, so I know that was one of the things that they were cutting back.
I
know they have a lot more stuff coming
yeah.
out, and so I can't comment too much on that, but I know that a lot of it's their funding sources. I think the thing that I really want to, what you're saying is that's the thing we really need to address is, that's what we got to do in a cut in the current budget in order to do what you're saying as a reset.
Well, I got you. In the 25-27, the budget, you wouldn't necessarily have to because you wouldn't be there. You would reset in some of the items that we put on the table currently. So you wouldn't be making the cut at that time. That cut would already go for it. You just wouldn't be spending it.
The beginning and the ending are here. So this would be the one that would be in the current year, or the current budget cycle, I should say. I'm sorry.
Right, and necessarily they wouldn't all have to come that. The priority right now is to get us a balanced budget. But we've heard, and the mayor actually made a comment that we hadn't had, we can't cut our way out of it. And that's why I was kind of looking, because in the book I didn't see that level or methodology of analysis. So I appreciate you coming forward with the numbers, because it not necessarily, and it's not going to be easy to get to any level of that. Nobody wants to do any cuts because you fight so hard to get to a certain level.
Yeah.
But according to this chart here, I think there is an ability to do something. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, Dean, I left my abacus at home, so I need you to answer a simple question for me. I received this in my box the other day.
Mm-hmm.
It's the baseline draft budget 2017-19 cut by 6%. You just handed me another one.
The reason why I did that is I wanted to make sure that the assumptions that were in the budget book were the same thing that you're looking at. So that's why I'm basically revisiting this and revising it. Okay. And I want to make sure if you go back to the beginning, that's why I'm also putting up there all the assumptions so you can see what they are.
What did we change here to come out from a negative 928,000 to a positive 7 million?
Like I said, it doesn't take much to move that needle that far.
No, I got you, but
I mean, when you're talking 400 million, but there's some assumptions in here that I don't think that we're going to be able to continue with those assumptions. One is the salary savings from the CalPERS adjustment. CalPERS changed the way that they're requiring us to make a lump sum every year. So we're not seeing it used to be a percentage of salaries, so we're not seeing a big salary savings from them going from one tier to the other. Eventually, like I said, I'd like to see that number go to 0 and then go back to a positive number, because we're just not seeing a benefit from them going from tier 1 and tier 2, because we're making one lump sum payment every year regardless. It's not the same model no more. That was some of the stuff. I've done a lot of programming on this. This is a very complicated model that takes a lot of time. And I did have to back up because in May 1, I've done a lot of work on it since then. Another one that we've changed, or I think should be changed eventually, is the property tax. We've seen a recovery of property, but I don't think we're going to keep seeing that. Eventually, it's going to come back to the 2%. We're seeing a recovery, so a lot of people are selling their houses, and we're getting more back than the Prop 13. So there is some, and like I said, there's very little adjustments between the budget book and where I think things should go. We also did some reprogramming on healthcare so we can better capture some of the changes.
I mean, I'm just looking at this, Dean, and I'm going, here we're looking at basically a 10-year projection, and it's 7.5 million here and a negative 928 here, so I'm kind of just going, holy moly, it's so, I think working 2 years at a time is the way we're going to have to do this, huh?
Yeah, this is a big model, and it's just really to give you a gut check of where things are going and what could happen if we don't change things. If you saw the thing just skyrocketing, you go, all right, things are going to be okay, though. Maybe we can do some capital improvements, or we can do this, that, or the other. But we try to make this as precise as possible. We do spend a lot of time on it, so. But keep in mind, the ones that I'm giving you now are because I wanted to make sure it matched what was in the budget book.
Anyone else? Okay, we're going to open this up to the public. City manager.
I had one more
Oh, I'm sorry.
request that you guys had. That was the city council budget. You can see the amount that's the general fund right here. And I'm not sure you could even capture that much of the benefit of the 114 to the general fund. Joe, help me out. I'm not sure when we could implement a change in the comp plan for the council if they said they didn't want any stipend.
As we said last time, you can't establish a lower amount or a different amount, not even lower. You can't establish a different amount till your next council is seated. So that wouldn't be until 2019. And but the council could, if it wanted to, as individuals, pay back to the city what they get from the city.
But you could see the breakdown. This is the salaries, O&M again. And a portion of this has city staff in it. So this is just the city council portion down here at the bottom. So you really couldn't give the stuff up. So if the numbers aren't matching, that's what it is.
And Dean, just for clarification to the public, that is for 5 council members, not per council member.
Yes, that's the whole kit and caboodle.
Okay, just so everyone knows.
We don't want to be compared to Bell, huh?
No.
Did you say that?
Thanks. Just to wrap up, I did also want to just clarify something, because something was said earlier in the meeting during a public comment, that something to the effect that when officers or I guess other employees, you might say, leave, that's no longer a burden on us. In other words, the statement was something to the effect of in this case, the police officers are no burden to the city as it relates to the unfunded liability with CalPERS. And unfortunately, the POA president apparently misunderstands how the process works, but those contributions and liabilities are prorated to the employers. So if someone works for multiple CalPERS agencies, builds up their retirement, every agency has a contributed portion. And in fact, if indeed it says, he suggested that someone actually works for a while and then goes to work in another agency and moves up in that agency or moves for higher pay, that ends up creating an even bigger liability for the city that's left behind, because their withholding was done at a lower rate, but now their liability is going to be at whatever that person's final high 3 years of earnings is. So I just wanted to clarify that since it's a budget-related issue. Thanks.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a few minutes. We keep talking about growth, and growth isn't going to get us out of it. It could be a thing. I'd like to just read a couple of figures, and our staff does have this. It's part of the old Bailey Avenue Project Economic Impact Report, and a letter was sent to our planning department August 30th, 2010. And I'm just going to give you just a couple of numbers here. Economic fees for Bailey Avenue project, just in impact fees per unit, $4.5 million, first phase. I'm not going to bore you with all the statistics on that, but the summary of findings on here is what I found most interesting. $657 million economic impact over the community, which is $600 million over the course of construction. $266 million the construction cost. And mind you, this is for 1,700 units out there. $26 million developer fees and impact fees. 7,383 jobs created by this project. It will have contributed an equivalent of 1,787 construction jobs. The multiplier effect comes out at 5,000. It will give us 480 permanent positions in the commercial aspect of the city. The potential is over 7,000 jobs during the construction. 25 million, over 25 million projected retail sales by Bailey Avenue households. That was on the 2009 data. This goes on and on. 336,000 VLF fees, vehicle license fees. 2.5 million projected sales tax revenue, 09-10, if that project would have stepped up. 10% percentage of increase in retail sales over what we did in 09. It's fascinating to me. I mean, this was the economic environment report for this project, so the numbers, I'm sure, have only inflated. I'm not going to say that we can't grow out of it, but it sure be nice to have a few of these millions. I think the whole total was close to $1 billion here.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, right over here, Mayor.
Oh, City Manager.
Thank you. Just to clarify, Mr. Starbuck, because I want to make sure I'm not debating the points. Your points are well made about the potential, but the numbers on the sheet that you gave are not related to the current plan. Is that correct?
This was the original build-out. This was the one that was submitted in August. It's the consultant's name that did this was Fletcher Cross and Associates in Santa Maria, August 2010.
But was it based upon the specific plan that's no longer in place?
I don't want to answer the specific questions. This was sent to your planning department. I just had the copy. I just extrapolated some of the numbers out of it to share.
Okay.
This is all in the Bailey package, so.
All right. Well,
I couldn't make these numbers up. I'd left my abacus at home.
Oh, no. And like I said, I'm not debating the numbers with you. I just wanted some clarity, so I won't ask the question. But
I'm going to assume, based on these numbers, that it was a full build-out of Bailey with the number of homes at 1,700. It's
right, which is not the current approved plan.
No, it's not. But
thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, now we'll open up the public.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Atul Patel. I'm a local business owner. First of all, I'd like to thank Patrick Weimiller for clearing up a couple of issues from about a month and a half ago. I'm not sure if Mayor Lingle, if you received the phone call also, but a lender or potential loan that was going to be placed on one of the businesses was going to reach out to you. I believe it did last Friday. And it cleared up a lot of things, so I'd like to say thank you. Number two is I noticed and this was about a month ago, but I had other prior issues going on, but other unscheduled items, there was at one time, the whole revenues that were going to be derived from the Hilton Garden Inn, I was proposing if a city council member would bring it up for discussion regarding the 10% bed tax that is received that could go to the police and fire for their infrastructure in the future. I know I've brought this up several times in the past, but there's a space on this paper still that it could still fit on here if one of the council members would like to bring it up. But I've noticed it's just disappeared and gone no more for a future discussion. So I would appreciate if that could be brought back. I also do recall that understanding that with this new hotel coming in, it's been brought to my attention that other hotels will get hurt. If people understand in the hotel world, there's different price points for where our guests come and stay. And the price point that we are in is I would say, in the competitive set of the Embassy Suites in Lompoc. But our goal is not to butcher or take away. We know having owned hotels in the past in surrounding cities. Is that me?
No, you're, okay.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say, okay.
Unless you want to go on a fire call.
Oh, no, sorry, okay. Taking away, we plan on bringing our revenues back that we've lost and drained to other cities, such as to Buellton, to Santa Maria. We plan on bringing that from especially Vandenberg that go out to other cities because we don't have certain infrastructure or full service accommodations for our guests. So it'll be interesting to see a couple of years down the road where exactly how much the bed tax from the Hilton Garden Inn actually does bring in on a net to what it's doing right now. And we are at peaks when it comes to bed tax revenues over the last few years, and I'm sure you guys know by what you see. So I thank you for your time, and I'd appreciate if one of you council members could bring that topic to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment. Okay, so I don't know how much we want to discuss on the budget this evening. We've got a full budget workshop on Monday. But I think this was additional information that will help us with our workshop on Monday. So does any council member want to continue any further this evening? Councilmember Vega.
Yeah, you know, listening to Mr. Patel there, is it possible for us to bring this up for our next meeting as far as discussion on the bed tax issue as part of our budget discussion? As far as just at least to throw it in there and see how it works.
You mean for adding that additional bed tax to public safety?
Well, I think yes. Not adding the additional bed tax for public safety, but I think he was more on the line of he was liking to direct it to public safety. I know that wasn't part of our direction, but not exactly sure where we can go with that as far as to discuss it.
We can certainly bring it up either now or at the meeting on Monday. It actually has been discussed, not necessarily in the public forum here, and there were some issues with it, but we can certainly bring it back for this public meeting on Monday.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Actually, that was discussed in a public meeting.
Okay, so I thought it was, yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I know I had a discussion with someone, so, I mean, maybe it was at the public meeting then, so. Okay, so it was discussed.
Is that something the other council members, do we need to vet this a little bit further, or? Just kind of asking here, what you guys want to do with this.
The city attorney want to give the synopsis on that came up the last time and see. I mean, we can bring it up for discussion if we're talking about budget.
Sure.
You drag through, but what you recollect on the synopsis?
The discussion was the city manager brought up the fact that request had been made and advised you that he would strongly recommend against doing that, and there was no indication from the council that they wanted to do that.
And it might be, I mean, I hear what Mr. Patel says, but it might be important to see as it progresses forward, and, you know, the proverbial don't count your chickens before they hatch. I mean, I know it's going to be fabulous, but let's see what the numbers are. They come on the table and see how we can. And I don't think you're capable of current councils of tying future councils' movements anyways that way. Am I correct with that?
That's very true.
Okay, so it'd be limited to what we're doing here, so there is that degree of limitation.
Okay, so, Councilmember Osborne.
Given all the discussions, given the need that we're going to look at the next 2 years and truly make some cuts, I'd like to hand back out to ourselves our city council budget priority list and take into consideration when we come back on Monday the directions we want to give. So I made copies for you all so you didn't have to go find it. It is our 1 through 8 lists: market rate housing incentives, business incentives, public safety personnel retention, retrofit of fire station number 1, funding savings plan for construction of new fire station and police station, rehabilitation of turf at City Park, Business counter revisions, changes to hours of business project tracking, greater efficiencies, customer friendliness, and upgrade of restrooms in city parks. So given what staff has told us, and our city manager has repeatedly told us he built the budget based on our priorities, I would suggest we review these priorities and decide if those are still our priorities when we come back on Monday in order to give better direction, because this is where our budget was built from. And if we're going to have to make cuts, then we really need to think about how is it affecting these priorities, and are these still our top priorities given the cuts we need to make? So,
Good suggestion. Councilor Mosby.
You know, let me make it a suggestion as well. And I know Dean's a very busy man, but I spent a little bit of time in there discussing these numbers with him, and there's a layer of complexity. And my suggestion is you guys spend a little time looking at these numbers. And he takes lunch from noon to 1, so he's one of those guys that are there. But go ahead and ask him some questions on these numbers. I think it's important that we look at them, we look what we're going to do, spend some time analyzing them, and reach out to him. He's got a lot of answers.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I don't think there's any further action on this item. So we'll move on to item number 8, renewal of agreement with County Santa Barbara Animal Control Services for a 2-month period. Yes. I'm sorry? We didn't set a time yet? I believe it was 6:30, so. I didn't? Okay, so before we start, so I guess we, oh, that's right. So Councilmember Starbuck wanted the time left to be discussed for the meeting on Monday, so we need to discuss the time for Monday's meeting. I'm suggesting 6:30. Be consistent with our rest of our meetings. Councilor Vega?
I'm open, so
Okay.
6:30 would be fine with me, I guess.
Councilor Osborne?
6:30 works for me.
Councilor Mosby? Okay.
Of course.
I'm fine.
6:30. Okay, Ms. Candy. Oh, it's not Candy anymore.
New name is Laura Doubles.
Yeah.
Miss Doubles.
Laura Doubles.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and community members. My name is Laura Doubles. I am the administrative analyst for the city. Due to the council's recent extension of the biennial budget, I will be presenting a report to you tonight that goes over the renewal of the agreement with the County of Santa Barbara for animal control services for only the first 2 months of fiscal year 2017-18. Since the budget has not yet been approved, and in order to give the council time to deliberate, the city is unable to commit to the county's full year proposal for fiscal year 17-18 at this time. Therefore, staff is recommending the council authorize the city manager to execute a 2-month amendment to the original agreement from July 1st through August 31st of fiscal year 2017-18 in the total amount of $50,254, which is an extension of this current year's contract prorated in order to extend services in the interim. The county has provided animal control services for the city operating out of the Lompoc Animal Control Shelter located at 1501 West Central Avenue. On March 10th, 2017, the county sent a proposal for the renewal of the animal services agreement with the city for the upcoming fiscal 2017-18 year. That proposal contained an increase for the year totaling 7.42%, which is substantially higher than the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, average for all of 2016 of 1.93%, and for the first 3 months of 2017 at 2.87%. If authorized, this will be the 5th amendment the city enters into with the county for these services, and the rest of fiscal year 17-18 will be considered upon budget deliberations. If the council chooses to not approve this proposed amendment, animal services provided to the city by the county will cease as of June 30th, 2017. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Questions? Councilmember Starbuck.
Whose property is that? Where the animal shelter sits? Is that county or is that city?
That is not city, so I'm assuming it probably is the county, but I can
I'm
look
just
that up
questioning
for you.
because you recall several years ago that we spent a lot of our block grant money to rehab that facility. And now, after I don't remember the amount, but hundreds of thousands, it was renamed Lompoc or something, I think, at that point. And now what is this, almost a double of rates that they're going to charge us after we rehab their facility? Am I talking about the same place here?
I would think so.
It is the same place.
Yeah.
We didn't completely pay for it. We did a
No.
portion. The county did a portion.
The county used some of their block grant funds. There was a veterinarian that kicked in, I think, 10,000 and matched. And
I think it was a joint, venture on it.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to help both. I mean, they're providing the services, but we are also getting those services for our community as well, so.
you wouldn't, off the top of your head, know what the total amount in the last budget was and then what the total amount was going to be this time.
Yes, I do have that. Okay, so the current agreement that we're in right now is $301,524. And the proposed for this 17-18 cycle is $323,844.
Each year?
Yes.
So when I'm looking at the physical impact here, we're paying them $25,000 a month for animal services?
Basically,
Correct.
let's see, 323.
It's currently right around 25,000, and it's proposed to go up by 7%.
7.42.
Thank you, 7.42.
It's a lot of money for a dog catcher.
And,
It is, well,
and Mr. Wilkie has told me that is indeed county property.
Laura or city manager, it is a lot of money. So if we decided not to renew the contract, I see the list in here of the services they offer, but I've heard reports that at times they don't respond. We have our code enforcement officer doing some of the enforcement anyway. So what is the impact on the city? What impact would we have on the city if we do not renew this contract?
First of all, I haven't had the reports about them not responding, so I can't speak to that aspect of it. But basically, the catchphrase might be "let the dogs run." We basically wouldn't have a control place. Setting up a shelter, there's a lot of process and a lot of regulatory aspects of it, because you've got to make sure it's a humane, whatever place you put together is going to have to provide for a humane care. And just initially, some of the services, we'd probably have to look at things, unfortunately, animals do get hit, run over, and need to be picked up. And so we'd have to find some alternative way of taking care of issues like that. We really haven't worked through all the details, and there are dozens and dozens of details of how we figure out whether we wanted to deal with things or not. Did you only want to deal with ferocious animals that were roaming, or do you want to tackle every roaming animal? Things like that.
To add to that, if I may, also the county enforces your license requirements, make sure that their dogs have proper shots and that kind of thing. So unless you would either say, we're not even going to worry about that, or need to figure out a way to fund that too.
And I'll make a comment, they don't do that for free either.
Well, the enforcement, I don't know what enforcement they do. I've had dogs and cats. I don't have any cats right now. I have a dog, I have a license on it, but I take my dog over to the dog park, and I think I'm the only owner over there that has a dog license on their dog. So, I mean, I don't think they do a lot of enforcement on that. They do charge me for a dog license. I don't know. I mean, is that something we could say no to and find out what happens and suffer the consequences if it doesn't?
We can let them run.
Let them run.
It would expire on June 30th, so for the period of the extension at least, we wouldn't be able to really do much until you guys deliberated and decided on what to do with that, because that would be for our upcoming budget cycle.
So I know, Councilman Vega, I'll get to it in just a second.
I got you, man.
You know, every time this comes up, I think we have a similar discussion. And I know at one time, we went back and we asked them to look at their numbers again and come back to us with another figure. And they came back to us with the same figure. I don't know, maybe it's time again for us to say, look, this is ridiculous.
Well, the county...
I know it's based on the population of the city, I believe.
Yes, per capita.
Yeah.
But yeah, the county, as you all know, they're going through their own fiscal problems as well. So that they weren't willing to negotiate that amount at all with us. So, I mean, there's a couple of different options. It's possible we could do like a RFP out there and see if there's somebody that would take the services and what they would offer us and for how much. But I don't know that the city would want to take it over because the cost right now is like probably less than what the city would actually.
And I agree. I don't think we should take over. But I just had a thought. I think we should go back to them to look at it because they're going on our population, which the federal penitentiary is part of our population. And I don't think they're allowed to have pets out there. So at least have them reduce the amount of population by our federal penitentiary and recalculate based on that.
I totally agree with you, but they already have actually taken that out of the per capita.
They've already taken out the penitentiary.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So that's not in our per capita.
Okay, Councilman Vega.
Well, it is budget. These are budget discussions, right?
Right.
You know,
Yes.
it's going to have to happen sometime. Seems like every time we come up to a budget cut, we're afraid to do anything because it hurts, you know, across the board. So we need to figure out, hey, is the extension something we need time to vet this out? Or is it something we can live with right now and just say we're done with it, you know? So I think it's probably a decision we need to make, you know? Costs us $50,000 to figure out a plan B. Do we need that, or can we, like you said, put out an RFP and see if somebody wants to privately want to do what they do, and then everybody else has to take their licensing to Bealton or something like that. You know, there are other agencies.
I mean, it is always an option. It's just that, you know, that is going to be a time consumption as well, is trying to get the RFP out there and make sure people are qualified and see what their services are that they offer.
So we're always under a time crunch, so
Yeah.
do we need this 60 days or not, guys? You know, I guess
And
that's what I'm looking at.
a
for
council call.
people, yeah.
For
So
what you would want to do.
I kind of tend to think that either way works, but I think it's a lot of money. So I think that probably we need to look at another direction. Whether anybody thinks we need this extra 60 days to vet this out, it's kind of my question here.
Councilman Starbuck.
Well, here's another thought that I'm having occasionally. We have the village, we have Mission Hills. I'm sure that when they capture the vicious dog in the village, they don't take it to Santa Barbara County Jail down there. They probably use our pound here. What are they being assessed on their population up there on property tax? How are they paying the county for animal services in the outlying areas?
I could be wrong, but I might refer that to Mr. Wilkie. But from what I understand, there's, I believe, 8 different entities that are all in participation with this agreement. One of them is the county, as well as the different cities around. So everybody is supposedly paying their share.
So the
Prorate.
Mission Hills Community District is getting a bill from the county for animal services.
Well, they're part of the county,
Community
yeah.
Service District in Vandenberg Village is getting a bill for animal services.
Well, not
If I may.
directly, but the county is paying for that service.
Those community service districts are specifically for water, sewer processing, and I think Mission Hills has street sweeping. Other than that, all the services up there are county. So they get county sheriffs,
Sure.
county fire, and since animal control is a county department, they get animal control as well. So they're paying for that out of their property taxes.
I would just be very curious to see what the contribution from the county is into the animal shelter at Lompoc, or are we banking the whole thing here?
Well, no, each city does pay for their own share, so,
Yes.
yeah.
And
So
the county is paying their share.
their share for
Are
the
they?
county. Yes, they are.
So on top of $25,000 a month, they're also getting an additional whatever from the outlying areas?
And, yeah, all the other cities.
If we do an RFP, I'm resigning and gonna be the dog catcher.
I'd vote for you.
Well, I know that they charge you basically for their veterinarian services. They have to have a vet, they have to have, you know, the care that they give them. They even have some kind of behavioral stuff. I mean, there's a list of stuff that they do provide, and it should be on your services agreement. But I agree, it's going up, and it's going up pretty rapidly lately, and they're not in the mood to negotiate it. So that's a council call on what you guys want to do. Right now, all I can suggest is either we extend it for 2 months until you guys can deliberate on this with the budget and see what you want to do, or end it and direct us on what policy you want us to do with that.
Councilmember Mosby.
You know, I think as Miss Candy's, well, sorry.
Doubles.
I'll take a little while to get that one, but what we've been presented with is an opportunity to buy us a little bit of time, and I think there needs to be a little bit of review on it. I think it's putting the number of, as it's based on per capita, when I think in Lompoc, there's a lot of people in our high-density areas, they don't have any pets, so we're billing for, we're being billed for something that's not really real on the per capita aspect, and I've seen the number of dogs go down significantly in our town, along with cats and others. So maybe we need a little memorandum I passed out, the 5432 cuts. Maybe we need to send that to them, because the county's cutting a lot of other areas. Maybe we need to get in a position to negotiate with them a little bit more, and hopefully some of them are listening that we are concerned at what the actual costs are. So maybe, like I said, we're looking at buying a little bit of time, and during that time we can ask some more questions and do some more research and really see some of the questions I think Councilmember Starbuck had. I think he still has questions. So maybe we can investigate and see what the full replacement of funds for that facility, who's paying for it all.
We have actually done quite a bit of communication with them, and I know the director has even come in and spoke with Patrick about it, and so, but we were left at that they aren't willing to change right now. So, and I think it's because of the county cuts as well. So I get it.
Councilmember Vega.
And I personally think that with the information given to us, that maybe we should draw a hard line. And we have the veterinarians and all the private entities here that can do the licensing and the vaccinations and all that. It'll be at maybe a different cost, but we do have other veterinarians in this area. You know, the dog catching aspect of it, that's something else. But what do you do when someone's not willing to negotiate and we're looking for money, you know? That's kind of my gist on this.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, I'd tell you, one of the things that I would be willing to do is to go ahead and move this out for the 2-month period. That way it would give us enough time to review their utility rates and make sure that we can get them at the 1.5 and then double that, so we can really recoup our money back on sewer, water, and electricity.
Okay, but they are in the city limits, the property that you're talking about. So they wouldn't be at a
We
one.
de-annex them.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
I'm at a loss.
Yes. Any other questions before we go to public comment? Thank you. Okay, open this up to the public. No one? Okay. Bring it back to the council. Discussion, and I'll entertain a motion. Councilman Vega.
I'll make a motion that we not move forward with giving them the extension and figure out a plan B on our own. Someone's got to make a move here to save some money, so we might as well start here. We're always extending something, we're going to discuss it, and we're going to talk about it, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to ask for more comments. Why don't we draw the line here? The county's already not going to negotiate. You guys are looking for money, it's $300,000. That's my motion.
Okay, I'll need a second. Okay, and that motion fails without a second. And would someone else like to make a motion? Okay. No. Councilman Osborne.
I'd rather only give them 1 month. I know we gave ourselves 2 months, but I'd rather only give them 1 month and we use that time to figure it out, because that additional $25,000 we might use to send that RFP out in the same time. So I don't want to give them the $50,000. I do want to put a harder stop on it. So I'd only prefer to do a 1 month extension with them while we figure out the budget and do a little research. So that's my motion.
And I'll give you a second on that one. 1 month's better than 2. You guys need to compromise a little bit better over there.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Discussion?
If I may,
Yes.
a typical RFP process probably would be longer than a month to get something back to you to approve. I don't think we could do it by July 18th, which is the next council meeting, in that time frame. I'm just mentioning that for the practical process of issuing. We don't even have a scope of work right now for RFP, let alone to issue it.
Okay, that was going to be my question, the time to put that out. Councilman Vega.
Can we give the money to the police department in the meantime?
Okay.
Or what if it's a cat in a tree, Victor?
Just kidding, guys.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? This is for a 1 month extension, and we're going to look for the city to go out for an RFP. And I'm assuming that if we don't have an RFP ready for 1 month, I guess we could always do another 1 month extension if that comes to it. Is that a possibility?
Certainly, but yeah, I'd have to echo Director Wilkie's comments that just, I mean, the time set up to write something, then we have to issue it, and the respondents need a period of time to be able to formulate, study their costs, and respond. 1 month just simply isn't a realistic time frame. So just as long as the expectation is understood, we are not going to have an RFP results in 1 month for you.
Okay, any other discussion? Let's vote. And that passes 3-2. Okay. Okay, we will move on to item number 9. Do we have an item number 9? Yes, we do have an item number 9. Is this approval of either an agreement with Lompoc Valley Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center for tourism protection and/or business assistance services, and that is Jasmine. Oh, not Jasmine. Okay.
Hi, thank you, Mayor, Council. Teresa Gallivan, Economic Development Director, Assistant City Manager. And we're bringing for you this evening the option of doing a 60-day extension for the chamber contract at the administrative rate of $9,000 a month, which has been the rate that we've had with the chamber for many years in our contractual agreements. Or if you'd like to discuss and review a new 2-year term agreement, that is also an option. And Amber Wilson, the CEO of the chamber, is here if you have any questions. Be happy to answer them.
Okay. Do we have questions for Ms. Gallivan or Amber? Amber, why don't you come forward? Yeah.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening. So one of the questions I have is, we're looking at possibly two different options. So the tourism promotions, I know what you do with that. You have ads in the different magazines, Sunset and Westways and everything. Now, Mr. Patel isn't here anymore, but how much of that actual advertisement is done right now? Maybe not the same, but similar through Explore Lompoc.
Well, since I've been involved, we've actually collaborated with Explore Lompoc. So the advertising that we've done, rather than either organization paying $16,000 for a beautiful ad, we split it. So essentially, they're producing an ad that's beautiful that we're paying half for. So to answer your question, I think they're doing a great job on the advertising side. What I can say that I've done is that we get a lot of advertising opportunities that come to the chamber just in the essence that we are a chamber. And so these outside organizations might not know that Explore Lompoc exists. So what I've been able to do is facilitate some of those advertising campaigns by passing along information and working with them.
Okay, so is it safe to say then that your advertising expenses have been cut in half if you're only paying 50% right now?
Sure, yeah.
So if we were to look at cutting something, if we cut 50% of your advertising costs, there should be absolutely no difference to the city.
That would be up to the city to determine.
I realize that, but
I could potentially agree with that statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, council discuss, otherwise we can open this up for public comment. Public.
Council members, Ken Ostini, board member of the Explore Lompoc board. You mentioned Mr. Patel. Again, I'm part of that board. We've collaborated with the chamber. When I was the CEO there, we collaborated many times in the 3 years of the existence of Explore Lompoc. And we will continue to do that as long as the chamber has the money to do that. We'll continue doing that. We work very closely with a marketing firm to determine what kinds of advertising and marketing we want to do. And again, we do get leads from the chamber at different times and collaborate with them, and we'll continue to do that. But that's been a collaboration that started 3 years ago. And I know we'll continue because it's a very important part to work together to promote our community. So just want to make sure you understood how that has worked, and we'll hope we continue to work.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Starbuck.
Sounds like we're getting double bang for the buck here.
With the advertising? Yeah. Yes, we are. Okay, discussion, or with public comment, anyone else from the public?
Lisa Rankin, Director of the Lompoc Museum. So this isn't directly, I know, related to us. This is specifically about the chamber, but I would just like to say that, speaking for the museum, Lompoc Museum, and for the other outside organizations, I assume if the budget is continued, the continuing resolution, would that mean that the funding is continued for our outside agencies as well on a monthly basis until? So I'd just like to offer that comment. Thank you.
It's a good question. Mr. Weimiller?
That was my understanding from the intent of the continuing resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Charles Summer. As an ambassador, I find the chamber to be very vital to our community. It does much more than, help bring in TOT dollars, tourism, everything else. I'm there fairly consistently as a volunteer, and I see that Amber, along with Chelsea, do a lot for the community. There's an absurd amount of phone calls. Where are the flowers for a lot of tourists? It is a very constant question. And there's not always flower fields, but I know that the staff over there at the chamber does a great job monitoring when the flowers are growing and where they're growing, and directs tourists to that area, because that's why a lot of tourists come here, City of Arts and Flowers. And I think it's crucial to continue to fund the Chamber of Commerce, because they are a huge asset to this community, whether you council members or the citizens actually go there and see what they do. They do a lot. So I would suggest that you continue to fund the chamber as well as the museum.
Thank you. Charles, can you sing the song, Where Have All the Flowers Gone?
Again, thank you for letting me come up here. I didn't plan on speaking, but I had to support as well as my chamber and my museum fellow people in the back. Allison Wells, I'm with the Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center, and I just have to say something regarding the victim advocate position once again. And if we're talking about continuing funding throughout the next month or so, I guess I want to stand up and say, hello, we still need funding here as well, or let's have a conversation. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just expand on my response to the question. We brought forward 2 agreements because we had renewals for either year or longer agreements that were being proposed. So because those services were being provided under specific contracts or agreements, that's why we brought those forward. But our understanding of the continuing resolution was for all these other supports and services, which aren't necessarily done by written agreement, but are done through your appropriation, we are continuing those on a month-by-month basis. So just wanted to clarify that. That would apply to the museum, that would apply to the crisis center, that would apply to others as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, we're going to close public comment, bring it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'd also just like to clarify that the 2-year agreement is contingent upon adoption of the budget. So at this time.
But you're looking at a 60-day extension right now.
Correct. So given that we don't have an adopted budget, that's really what we're looking at.
But what you're looking at tonight is the possibility of a 60-day extension.
Correct.
Okay. Councilmember Starbuck.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we accept staff recommendation 2, that we extend the chamber contract till August 31st, 2017.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Let's vote. And that passes 5-0. Okay. Written communications, other than what you've given us earlier?
Just what you've received.
Okay, oral communication. Now, just so you know, on our next item, there's a council request. We're going to have a status report on the ad hoc committee for marijuana. We don't have public comment on that, so if you have something to say on that issue, please use your opportunity right now during oral communication. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. Or any other item you want to speak on.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, City of Lompoc, citizens. On November 8th, 2016, Lompoc voters went to the ballot box to vote upon a number of propositions. Among these was Proposition 64, or the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, which legalized the use and possession of recreational marijuana and authorized households to grow up to 6 plants. Additionally, Prop 64 created oversight, regulation, and the authorization to collect new taxes in a budding industry that is projected to have sales over $1 billion in California. A majority consisting of 57.6 voters percent of voters, of Lompoc voters, voted in favor of legalization and have authorized new taxes to be collected. This council authorized a ad hoc committee in December. There was 4 meetings between January and May of this year. During these meetings, a number of Lompoc citizens and neighbors from regional areas came and spoke in favor of legalized marijuana, both recreational and medicinal. In fact, during these public meetings, not one person came to speak against legal marijuana in Lompoc, with the exception of the chief of police. In terms of revenue, I bring to your attention what is happening in Calaveras County, a population of about 45,000. Last year, 737 marijuana growers paid fees of $5,000 each to apply for a permit for commercial cultivation. Last year, the county collected $3.7 million from the growers' fees. As of April 2017, the county has spent $1.69 million so far for additional staff in planning, code enforcement, environmental management, county council, and the sheriff's office, as well as vehicles, equipment, and aerial imaging. As of April 17, 1.9 remains in balance. There are 25 positions funded with regulatory program revenues in Calaveras County. For the sheriff's office, that breaks down to 6 new deputies, 2 sheriff's service technicians, and 1 sergeant for a total cost of $754,459. An additional $106,352 for patrol services and $346,845 for sheriff's equipment. This also includes $143 for environmental health, $247 for the planning department, building department with 3 code enforcement officers for a total cost of $230,455. And finally, in terms of impacts on the local economy in Calaveras County, cannabis will have an estimated annual impact of $339.2 million, will employ 3,404 employees, and pay $172.2 million in income to workers. I ask that the city consider taxes
Thank you, sir.
regarding cannabis.
Anyone else? And remember, you have 2 minutes on this oral communication.
Hi, my name is Camarina Sankey. I work on a farm, not locally, but around our area. And we're talking about all the money we need. That's where it's at. There's nothing but money there. We drive, the majority of our employees, 3/4 of the population of our employees are from Lompoc. We drive all the way to where we go. We're housing there, we're eating there, we're buying supplies there. All our money that we should be spending in Lompoc is being sent somewhere else because that's where the work is. And we're not working here. It's nothing but a cash crop, and I don't know why we haven't been done it already. Why not bring different flowers? That's all we have to do is change the flowers. And it's just a cash cow.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Brad Wilkie, Finance Director. I just want to mention that when Councilmember Mosley mentioned the county making cuts, in one of the papers they were talking about some of the proposed cuts, and one of those is the contract that we have with them for the jail, which is money that comes to the city. So that I don't know what the resolution of that was, but it was a proposed reduction on their part, which would reduce our general fund funding. So just wanted to mention that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one rise, we're going to close oral communication. And we are going to move, well, this is also a council request, comments, but let's first do a status report on the ad hoc committee.
So the ad hoc committee, as was mentioned, met 4 times and was responsible for evaluating what the public's vote at 58% in support of Prop 64 meant to the community. As was mentioned by a previous speaker, we didn't only have 2 individuals that spoke out, but they were mostly concerned about what that legislation would look like and how stringent it would be. So based on the public attendance at all 3 meetings held to hear the community support of Prop 64, By 58%, the committee recommends to council that a cannabis ordinance encompassing both medical and recreational industries be drafted for the city of Lompoc. It should encompass all aspects of the industry, including manufacturing, cultivation, retail and delivery, testing, distribution, and transporting. The ordinance should dovetail with Prop 64 and any additional state legislation that is in the process, and as of today, the rider bill from the governor was passed, so the Senate did pass that bill. We should consider business sustainability and address health and safety, fees and monitoring, and compliance. It is the full cost recovery, not only for creating, but for implementing the ordinance, that will need to be carefully addressed to reduce the impact of the industry on our community. Taxation should be reasonable and staggered, allowing entry into the industry, but providing a new revenue stream. Some examples of ordinances currently being reviewed or implemented that the committee would like staff to consider are the ordinances from Shasta Lake, Santa Rosa, and Los Angeles. In particular, the city of Los Angeles has preferences for employing residents as well as issuing permits to locally based entities. For instance, the city of Santa Rosa's tax proposal encourages cannabis businesses to enter the regulated market, provide tax certainty for cannabis businesses, and ensure the city has adequate revenue to regulate its industry. It passed as of June 6th. That was a 2% of gross receipts, or $5 per square foot of cannabis cultivation at the taxpayers' election. After 2 years, the tax is scheduled to increase to 8% of a gross receipt, or $25 per square foot. For manufacturers, the initial 2-year rate will be 1% of gross receipts and increase to 8% after a 2-year term. For dispensaries, the initial 2-year rate will be 3% of gross receipts, only applicable to non-medical use, and will increase to 8% after the 2-year term. And for distributors, the initial rate will be 0%, but distributors will be subject to the standard city business tax under the Santa Rosa Code. After 2 years, this rate will be set at 8%. So the structure there was very much a entry into, given the additional costs and fees that will be necessary by those businesses, but an automatic guaranteed budget line for those businesses, as well as a focus for the city for income. Regarding personal cultivation, both indoor and outdoor should be allowed with minimum oversight. A basic permit that allows for 2 to 3 plants outdoors and no inspection for indoor growth should be considered. The city of Banning has an ordinance that addresses this concept in a legal way that has not been contested. And finally, while there are many calling for the legalization of cannabis industry in our community to resolve our budget issues, it would be short-sighted to predict the tax revenue and the sustainability of the industry as more communities welcome the concept. It is a new revenue stream and should not be ignored, given the 58% of the voter support locally. So again, this wouldn't solve our budget issues. It wouldn't guarantee the millions of dollars that many communities currently are seeing, given the growth of this industry in many communities around us. But it is a revenue stream we should not ignore and we should examine, and the committee recommends council consider directing staff to create an ordinance. On the back are just a few of many of the research links and articles that vary, addressing public safety, insurance concerns, many of the issues that were brought up by our law enforcement and our fire service. We are aware of their concerns and we do want to address them, but I think there is the possibility to provide legislation that allows for it. So this has been sent to the city clerk and will be a part of the minutes for anybody interested in the links that the committee researched with. So,
City Attorney, so this is a report from the ad hoc committee. Is this something that we need a motion now to direct staff to go forward?
I was actually going to suggest that what you need is you need 3 people to say you want to have this item put back on an agenda so that we can you can give us the direction, because you can't give us the direction tonight.
Okay, so it's not a vote, it's just a council majority.
And then the council can discuss what they'd like that ordinance to look like, what kinds of details they may want to have, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay, so I'm assuming, Councilmember Osborne, you're going to be an aye on that.
Yes.
So I need 2 other council members to...
2.
I'm in.
Okay, so we've got 3. Now we need to give specific directions to the city staff and what you want them to bring back to us.
No, what we'll do is we'll bring this back to you on the next, and then you'll give us that direction.
Okay?
And do you have a preference as to what meeting you'd like to have us bring this back?
2026? No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Green energy. Green energy, yeah. Okay. Well, how much time will it take?
Well, we don't have a meeting next, on the 4th.
Yeah, so the next meeting isn't until what?
The 18th.
The 18th. Is that enough time for you?
I will make an attempt to hit that. If I can't hit that, I'll hit the next meeting.
Okay, so I guess the direction is the 18th, possibly the 18th or the meeting after.
August 1st.
Okay. Is that acceptable to the 3 members that were affirmative? Okay. Council reports, meetings, Councilmember Mosby.
I represented on June 15th, the city of Lompoc, both at the Air Pollution Control District meeting and the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments meeting.
Councilmember Starbuck.
I have no reports, but I'd like to remind everybody that 1 July is the groundbreaking for the Fallen Warrior Memorial up at Beatty Park.
Councilmember Vega.
No reports, but it's Flower Festival week. That's why we all have our shirts on, okay?
Councilmember Osborne.
I attended the coronation on behalf of the mayor for our new flower queen crowned on Saturday, Sierra Blow. So I look forward to seeing her in the parade.
Okay, and I attended many meetings, including 2 change of command ceremonies at the base and other things. Nothing with that was at a city expense. So I just want to remind everyone now that we do have a budget workshop here in City Council chambers this coming Monday, Monday the 26th. Is that this coming Monday? Okay, this coming Monday the 26th, 6:30 p.m. The next regularly scheduled City Council meeting is here in City Council chambers, 6:30 p.m. on July 18th, 2017. Thank you and good evening.